Let's go!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to BingetownTV's coverage of Amazon's The Wheel of Time. We have finally made it. Episode 8, The Eye of the World, otherwise known as the season finale. So, obviously, this episode, Bingetown TV's episode, is coming out a bit later than usual. We're usually pretty good at getting them out quick after the episodes. But
Happy holidays.
Obviously, yeah, it was the holiday season. So, first of all, yes, happy holidays to you and yours. Hope everyone is doing well. That leads us into the second point, is that some of us were not doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a
Raise your hand if you had COVID.
we had to push
not me.
back. We had to push back the recording a little bit. So the point on that is that if you're watching or listening to this episode after the absolute tsunami of Wheel of Time content that has come,
Ooh, did you do that on purpose?
Yeah,
oh yeah, I know what I'm about. We appreciate you. So obviously, this is coming out a lot later than the episode. I'm sure you guys have dove in rather to a lot of other Wheel of Time content. So thanks for sticking with our content. And before we get into kind of going into the episode scene by scene and doing our deep dive stuff, obviously we're only going to do one episode. We kind of missed the train on the whole instant reaction stuff. Just very brief, just overview of what we thought about the episode. So no theory talk, David, and you can go first.
I'll get it out of the way. This was just a phenomenal, great season. All my expectations were met. It was about halfway through this episode where I was like, it was hitting me that we weren't going to get season 2 for another year at least. And I'm just sitting here like, fuck my life. Like, there is just so much we were tackling in this episode and so much left to tackle. I just really want to keep going with it. It's going to be sad to have to wait this time for the next episode, but overall the series I'm so glad I was a part of this.
Like Dave said, loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was a weird feeling going into the finale because they're saying like, oh, this is the last battle. Like, we're going in and this is going to be it. But in our perspective, like, yeah, this is only season 1. Like, we know there's going to be much more story to come. So I didn't know what to expect, but I knew there was going to be cliffhangers of sorts. I thought they did a great job of, I don't know where the hell this is going to go now for season 2. Like, they did a good job of just like cutting it at a point of not setting up too much. And I loved it. I thought all the characters are great. Sorry, Perrin, besides you. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but I loved it. I thought it was a great finale.
Yeah, this was a really good episode. It wasn't the best, and I have my issues with it being like a book reader. I did not expect the amount of backlash that it got on social media, and it seems like it's pretty split down the middle, where if you didn't touch the books ever, you love this episode. No, that's pretty much 100% hit rate so far of people I talk to. And if you've read the books, you really dislike it. I'm pretty in the middle, leaning more towards liking it. This episode had some of the 2 of my favorite scenes of the whole season, but it also had 2 or 3 of my least favorite things that happened. And it's more about the implications of what it means going forward rather than it sucking in the moment. You guys would never be able to like even begin to understand the level of change that they're making here that might play out 3 seasons down the road. And that's what's really bothering people if you see that negative backlash online. I still think that if you had no book knowledge, though, everything that happened in this episode was set up. The seeds were planted correctly, and maybe there wasn't the greatest payoff for a few things here or there. We'll break that down as we go. But it was always going to be tough. People think that the end of book 1 is like the craziest what the fuck just happened moment in the series, so it was going to be the hardest part to adapt. And I think it's pretty much the general consensus that book 1 was always going to be the hardest book to adapt because it starts getting into its own rhythm and feeling itself out once all the seeds are planted as the books go on. And I think that's how the show's going to be. But again, a couple things I pretty much hate it, but then a lot of it I thought landed fine, and I really enjoyed it, especially the opening and the closing scenes.
I was just going to say, those are the 2 scenes you were talking about with being your favorite.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
The opening, closing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the worst episode, I think, to me. I think there might be even a third camp to what Luke's talking about. I think there's probably a little bit of a difference between full series reading versus reading some of the books versus being a show only. I didn't love honestly when I watched it for the first time I was like holy shit that was legitimately awful, but watching it again and like thinking about things more and like not being on such a like emotional high. Granted I watched it after like, you know, a 15-hour day of work and stuff, so not the best mindset to go into it. But they did a lot of nice things. I think a lot of it has to do with like not even story things, just the way things are edited and look, and that had a lot to do with COVID. So I try to give them a little bit of a pass on some of the things that were out of their control. My least favorite episode, I don't think it's a terrible episode like I did after I first watched it, but definitely a little bit of a disappointment in terms of a season finale, I would say to me.
Yeah,
you never want your
definitely.
finale to be, you know, a lot of people's least favorite episode.
That's interesting. I did see on YouTube, you know, people posting their breakdowns of it and saying, you know, this was the worst of the season so far. Crazy to me because, you know, as a non-book reader, I thought it was great. I'm sure there's things that could have been a lot better that a lot of people are looking forward to. Kind of seems like that's what's going on with like The Witcher right now. You know, I watched it and like that an episode, I was like, I hated that. And then, you know, after rewatching it, kind of like separating it, realizing its own adaptation, um, trying to process that as its own is difficult. But um, I think I'm learning a lot about it with Witcher and Wheel of Time coming out at the same time.
And that's
Because
so funny because I'm the exact opposite, basically. Because
Exactly.
Witcher, I obviously have no idea what they're changing, so everything feels like the story to me. And then it's the complete opposite with Wheel of Time.
And I got both in the book knowledges for these series, and I would just say, Kyle, keep it like that for The Witcher. It's the best way to go. That is the story. That is the Witcher story to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess quickly, I have been enjoying The Witcher, but to bring us back to what we're here for, the Wheel of Time. So our cold open, we had another cold open, another very good cold open. So we're 3,000 years ago, and we get Lews Therin Telamon and Latra Posey de Sume. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. They are debating a plan to battle the Dark One. So they're speaking in the Old Tongue. We've heard a little bit about the Old Tongue. And they're kind of just having almost this argument that Lews Therin wants to directly battle the Dark One and imprison him, while his compatriot, his fellow Aes Sedai, actually, she is advising against it. She basically predicts exactly what happens in that he will expose the male half of the power to the Dark One, and the Dark One will corrupt it. So I was shocked that they showed us this scene. I was happy to get us some Age of Legends stuff. I'm just curious what the two show only guys were thinking when you saw 3,000 years ago.
Crazy, absolutely nuts. Because I kind of put it together, and they do confirm it quickly. This was the last Dragon Reborn, so they said, you know, we don't even know how long ago it was. It was just so many cycles, but it ends up being 3,000 years until he pops up again. So one, that was nuts, and two, the conversation she says is like, oh, like, but your actions could set us back 1,000 years. And then the last thing we get as they pan out, it's like superistic flying cars, like
Fuck yes.
insane like buildings, and you're thinking, okay, like you think it could set it back 1,000 years, it's really going to set you back like 5,000 years. Like this is insane. I thought it was really cool.
This was easily my either tied or like the second best cold opening we got, tied with the Aiel opening. I absolutely just loved getting into this shot of the OG DR. That's what he is in my notes. He's the OG DR. We also get.
It's kind of a question. I'm sorry to interrupt very quickly.
Yeah, that if he is or
he
not.
the Reborn, or is he? That's kind of a conversation of no one really calls him the Dragon Reborn ever in the books. The Dragon Reborn is kind of Rand because Lews Therin Telamon is the dragon. He's the guy who like got the title.
Right.
Just like a very small thing. I just think it's easier to like relate Rand and him together in this episode when they call him the Dragon.
Doesn't that not really make sense with how the fact that Dark One always talks to Rand, even in book one, saying like all the time, he's just like, we fought thousands of battles. I thought it's pretty heavily implied that while, yeah, Lews Therin is the only Dragon Reborn in the past that's going to really matter for this story. But I thought it just meant that there could have been like infinite amount of cycles.
Oh no, there is. Yeah. It's just that like the soul is the same. It's just that Lews Therin's timeline when he was alive, they gave him the title of Dragon.
Gotcha.
When they give him the title of Dragon, it was more of like a military like nickname almost.
Okay.
It wasn't like he's the prophesized guy. The
Gotcha.
prophecies came afterwards.
Yeah, and I just want to put out a warning too. We are probably going to be mentioning the books a lot more than we normally do here because I think it's important, especially when it's gonna really put some context into me and Kyle's views on some things that non-book readers won't know. So I think it's going to be important for us to talk a little bit more about them than normal, and this is a perfect example of why. But I just want to say that I fucking love that last shot of like the futuristic world because I don't know if I mentioned it on podcast before, but there was always this theory in the Wheel of Time community, and I don't know if it ever gets confirmed because I didn't get that. I'm not that far, but that this story, the Wheel of Time, is not it's not a dystopian story where it's it's like a different universe. It's more of a apocalyptic story where it's the future of Earth, meaning our timeline happened way in the past, and like this whole breaking is what set us back into the medieval times. And I don't know if that's ever confirmed or not, but that's what this got more evidence because of this opening.
So that's actually confirmed in the first book. It's confirmed. Honestly, it might be confirmed in like the third chapter. You would never really notice in your first read, but you read it again. And so, yeah, so very quick timeline is that the first age is our age, where we are living right now. They talk about like they've been distorted over time, but they have myths about people going to the moon and things like and creating nuclear weapons and things like that. All of the names are distorted, but like Apollo, the Apollo missions becomes a thing.
Oh, that's
like,
so cool.
That's like a myth in the world, essentially. The second age is the Age of Legends, where Lews Therin Telamon is from, where we get the 3,000 years ago. And then the third age is what we are currently in the storyline, where Rand and them live.
The only thing I want to also, there's two comments that I had from this cold opening. One is that we learn that men also used to be Aes Sedai back in the second age. So that was really cool because we now know that the dragon had something to do with the men. Kyle already said it, that in that battle, the power gets corrupted for men, so they get split somehow from the Aes Sedai. My second comment is just more of like a throw out there kind of question. It's just like, how important is that baby going to be? Like, if we're talking cycles, is it kind of like reincarnation, or is it Rand is going to be a descendant of this guy kind of thing? So I'm just kind of interested to see, because with the subtitles, he calls the child a name, but it's in the subtitles it says sweetheart. But to me, it sounded like an actual name that he was saying, like it was like Chala or something weird. I can't remember, but it could again just have been old language. But I just wasn't sure if a name would have been important to the point that this child will then become important in the future. So,
I think that's a wonderful observation, and B, this is me firing from the hip. Lews Therin has children. They have names. I don't believe the word that he says is either of their names.
Okay.
I do think it's just
sweetheart.
It's just the old tongue word for sweetheart.
Okay.
So two things I want to bring up. The first is that Latra says to him after it seems pretty set that Lews Therin is going to go and do his plan with his 99 followers, or 99, what are they called?
Companions.
The companions. She says, fine, like do it. Like the women will be here to clean it up like we always are. And that's actually one of the first things I think that's in Moraine's monologue in the opening of season 1, episode 1. So that was a cool parallel to bring it back, saying like, it's pretty much always been this way. The women are around to clean everything up.
3,000 years ago, it was the same.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want to say, me and Dave been talking about this all morning, is Lews Therin, as she's walking out, he says to her, he calls her the Tamerlan seat, the Watcher of the Flame, and then she says back, "Oh, Lews Therin, the Dragon Reborn." Or yeah, she says the Dragon Reborn. But I guess Paul, Dave, and even Kyle, if you can chime in, I don't really know much about what Tamerlan seat means, but what I was just guessing is that when there were the two male and female parts of the Aes Sedai, maybe they each had a leader, and the Tamerlan seat was the leader of the women. That's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that theory was the only, like, you mentioned that, and I was like, that's the only thing I could possibly think of. So if Paul, if you want to give a thought.
Yeah, I mean, definitely noticed that there was an added T on there. It's spelled the same way, right? Just with a T on the front. So I don't know, Merlin, maybe that's something. And then T is for male and A is for female, and just slap that T out of there. So it's only female Merlins. That's all I got. I honestly didn't have anything,
You're
any
watching.
theory.
You're watching too much Cursed, man.
Probably. There was also.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Paul, I'm
sorry.
No,
No, I was just gonna spit more bullshit. So.
Honestly, we appreciate the honesty. So I have this wonderful book right here called The Companion. What is it? The Wheel of Time Companion, which my wonderful sister got me for Christmas. So I figured I'd bring it to the finale recording to bust out. So so yeah, he uses the term the Tamerlan seat. There's also a thing called the Ring of Tamerlan. So the Ring of Tamerlan is a legendary ring, which is worn by the leader of the Aes Sedai during the Age of Legends. So in reality, it's basically Lews Therin actually wears the Ring of Tamerlan in the books, but the Tamerlan is just becomes almost, or I'm sorry, Amerlin just becomes a bastardized version of Tamerlan. So it's just that the name kind of got, I guess, mistranslated in that it lost the T and then just becomes the Amerlin seat.
Okay.
And
That's
speaking of,
just the quick answer.
now that you mentioned Tamerlan Ring, this is maybe cutting a little early, but it just reminds me of when we see the Dark One and he's teaching Rand how to channel. I made an observation that he has like this weird bracelet ring looking thing on his finger. So could be a connection there. That's all I wanted to point out.
Luce was also wearing that too, as well. When he went to like silence the baby and say "sweetheart," he was wearing it around his hand as well.
So I wonder if he got the ring in the battle.
Two theories of what it was.
Do we want to get there when we get there? Do you want to say when we get there?
Well, I might as well say it here because one was maybe this was some type of technology that they used to channel that they just lost, because we do know they lost a hell of a bunch of other technology, houses, cars, all of the foundation engineering notes that they had before. Now they have to start from scratch. So I wonder if this is something that the Dark One knows about, obviously, because he was around during those cycles where they did figure it out. Or it was the ring. That was the other one.
Yeah, they don't actually ever, I don't think, they don't mention the Ring of Tamerlan. It's just the title. So I would say that there's nothing to prove.
There's nothing there. The other one, actually, I forgot about, was like maybe something only men needed to channel, because the only two people we saw channeling were men using it. So I don't know. Yeah.
I think that both of those things are very good ways to look at it.
So but Paul, if you didn't know, I was telling Dave this already, that this is not really, but this is a sort of take on the opening to the actual book one. Like we get Lews Therin is the first page of Prologue 1.
That's cool.
So like that was a huge change from the books that people were, we thought that was coming at some point in the season. And I thought it made more sense to keep it at the end because it kept the whole who the Dragon Reborn mystery was alive like a little bit better, and the Dark One being revealed and stuff like that. So
yeah, personally, I think it would have been better to do the actual prologue, but this scene doesn't happen explicitly in the books, but we know this conversation happened at one point, that the male Aes Sedai wanted to do this plan and the female were against it because they thought it was going to lead the way that it led. But before we move on, because the women, they know what they're talking about sometimes, just some fun little nuggets, I guess, as we like to say here. So the shot when we look into the city is actually, if you line it up with the shot at the end of the cold open in episode 1, all of the buildings are in the same places. So they were looking at the city that he looks over.
That's
amazing.
Insane.
It's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
I'll send it
really
in the group
cool.
right now.
Luke showed me the picture and I was just blown away. It's just really cool. These references. This is something that we've seen Wheel of Time do throughout the season, is just drop these little Easter eggs early on in the season, and the payback doesn't happen until the end of the season. And that was one of them. And it was just really cool seeing that it did whatever happened in that original battle of the dragon and the Dark One. It is confirmed, we can say it here, that it did set them back 1,000 years at least. So whatever that was told was accurate, and it was cool seeing that on screen.
Dude, I thought it was Malkier at first.
Yeah, that would have been a good way to think of it too. It was definitely hard to like bite my tongue in the beginning. And I don't even remember if I like struggled or kind of like talked around it a little bit in the first episodes, or whether that was just with friends. But I know Alki was like keyed into that immediately as well, that they looked like skyscrapers.
Yeah, we said that on episode 1, and you hit us with a big fat waffle.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Because I
watch and
figured it
find
would come
out.
back around. So they've done a pretty decent job of doing that. Another one, the flying cars, legit thing that happened. They were called Joe cars, which I just think's funny that they went as far to have a name. The name of the city is called Paradisen, which is kind of an allegory for the word paradise. It was the
Yeah.
capital city, the largest city in the world in the Age of Legends.
What was the name?
Paradisen. It's 2 words.
Sounds like parent to me a little bit.
Don't
Because
tempt me, don't
the
tempt me.
Dragon Reborn was born on Dragon Mound, so come on.
So is
it's-
Perrin just
so
the
parent
city
is from
reborn?
Paranland or whatever. Whatever.
Ireland.
Farron's the guy. I appreciate it. The building they're in is probably most likely the Hall of Servants, which is just basically the headquarters for the Aes Sedai, which was their version of the White Tower. And the one gripe I guess I would say I have with this scene, it looks great, the shot's amazing, but at this point, like they're at war with the dark. This is like the last ditched plan that they have. It was almost made out of desperation with no other options, but the city looks fine. It doesn't look like they're at war. It just looks like a willy-nilly plan that happened. Just a very small gripe, but just thought it might have conveyed it a little better.
I think it's about time to move out of the opening because,
Yeah.
30 minutes later.
honestly, no, I do love that scene though, and I love that we
Yeah.
got loose there and LTT.
I'm going to do this before we move out because I like this passage from the books, and I think that a criticism that I have and that I've read also is that they haven't really hit on how dangerous it is to be the dragon and how afraid people are of the dragon. I feel like we know that like people who love Rand are upset that he's the dragon and they fear for him, but like not the world at large. But essentially, there's a prophecy that's written that's kind of describes the aftermath of the plan that's put forth in this scene. That is very short story. Long story short, rather. The moon was his blood and the sun his ashes. The seas boiled and the living envied the dead. All was shattered and all but memory lost. But one memory above all others of him who brought the shadow and the breaking of the world remained, and him they named the dragon.
Dope.
Could have been nice to throw us a little bone like that, but
Yeah.
honestly, it was so cool that they made the parallel to episode 1 that it's fine with me.
So does the dragon fail then? Like,
Yes.
okay, that's what I
Yes.
figured. Okay, so
Yeah.
but we
Luce
don't
Theron
know.
Telamon fails spectacularly.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Because that's the point. Is the dragon going to break the world or save the world?
Right, and
And in
he
this
broke
iteration,
it.
he broke it.
And that doesn't necessarily mean he chose the dark route. It just happened to be that he broke the world, right? Like he was probably good, but he just didn't accomplish what he was meant to do as a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, he basically did exactly what she said he was going to do, which
Okay.
was
Got
ruin
it.
everything
Got it.
because
I
of
like
his
that.
pride.
That was a cool quote.
All right, so back to the modern day. I guess you could say the third age.
Modern day.
Yeah, called by some, as they say in the books. So we open up with a very quick scene that we're going to skip over. Perrin and Egwene basically make up and say that they both love Rand. Like we said, episode 7 stuff, we're over this whole relationship thing, so we're going to move right past it.
Should have
into-
skipped it.
into a better relationship. I just like it as a leadway into, and I'll talk shit on it whenever I can, into Lan and Nynaeve. So they have a really nice moment before Lan kind of embarks on this journey to find Moiraine and Rand in the Blight. So Nynaeve reveals that she actually didn't track Lan in episode, I guess it's 3, or between episodes 1 and 3, she actually tracked Moiraine, and she offers up Moraine's tell so that Lan can track them through the Blight.
I thought that was a really cool reveal.
That's it.
That's all I had. Yeah, I thought it was really cool.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I thought like it was really her like tracking, like straight up following signs, but the fact that she was just following, basically being pulled towards whatever the Moraine's give is or her tell.
Yeah, I wonder what the
that's pretty
tell
cool.
is. That's just something I was thinking about because I don't think they never told us what it actually was. So I wonder if it's
And
something
Lan
that'll
is
come
able to
back.
do it.
Yeah,
too,
so
as well.
I wonder if it'll come back. I also like this scene too because it's kind of. I did make a theory on that. Lan would eventually somehow become Nynaeve's warder, and in this scene, it made me feel like it's still a possibility, especially with the events that happen at the end of the episode. It's still, for my theory of Land becoming Nynaeve's warder at some point, I think it still puts a pin in that.
Because the bond is broken.
Because the bond is broken and Moraine at the end can't channel anymore, so Land doesn't really have anyone to mask with. So that's the only reason.
They have a very intimate scene here where Nynaeve, they bring back the line that a wisdom never weds, and she kind of interjects and is like, hey, I'm not going to be a wisdom, I might be an Aes Sedai. And he kind of stops her right there, delivers an absolutely iconic line from the books, from the end of book 1, in that I will hate the man you choose because he is not me, and I will love him if he makes you smile. You are as beautiful as the sun rays. You are as fierce as a warrior. You are a lioness, wisdom. Basically breaks her heart in that we can't be together. It's a little different from the books. The one line I think they were missing from the books is that he says that no woman deserves the sure knowledge of a widow's black as her bride price, you least of all. I think that would have sold it a little bit more of like why he's just rejecting her and that like I am destined to die. I don't really have any other purpose besides doing that. So
yeah, I don't have any comments to add to this scene. I just think this is exactly what I expected. And with that being said, it hit. Like it was exactly what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, it does seem a little salty or a little fucked up of him to fuck her and then do this. I will say.
Yeah, she fucked him.
Well, this is true. This is true. Because in the books, it's like he's like stops her right there and is like, "No, I can't." So, I mean, at least I guess for a man's perspective, at least he got something out of it. Am I right?
Yeah.
So another quick scene that we'll probably just end up skipping over very quickly is that Egwene and Nynaeve chat about the wind again. Another parallel we have to episode 1. They even bring back what they heard in episode 1 and that something in the wind is wrong. But I would say the most important part is that Nynaeve now says that she hasn't listened to the wind since she first channeled. That's probably something I'll bring up at the end of the episode.
I was she can't. What the fuck?
I don't understand. She can't, right? It's not that she hasn't. It's just that she can't.
Yeah,
right?
She can't since the first time she channeled. I think it has a connection to what happens at the end, so we can talk about it a little bit then.
Okay, because I have no idea. Because I was going to say I have no idea what that is.
And Luke, that also might be more of an off the pod conversation.
Okay.
Because it'll probably end up spoiling some things that they'll get into in season 2. Not even huge spoilers, but it's just probably not worth it. So we move from everyone kind of having these intimate moments to now we're demanding answers. We're kind of taking action. Rand's gone. We are kind of sitting on our hands here at Fal Dara, the rest of the people from Ebon's Field, and Loyal, the goat. So they head to Min for answers. The only other person, I guess you could say, they really kind of know in Fal Dara. And she does her Min thing where she doesn't tell other people, besides Moraine, I guess, what she sees.
This was another scene for me that was like, we learned nothing here. The only thing we get confirmed here is that we see Nynaeve's future of potentially dying in this moment. Like this scene did nothing for me besides just let me know that Nynaeve is going to die.
Had the line that every single one of her visions so far has come true.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, you don't want to say confirmed that everything she sees is going to happen because, something could be wrong. But as of right now, what she sees is going to happen, and we see Nynaeve choking and like getting fried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love Min, but she pretty much had nothing to add here. I just think it was the cooler part of the scene to me was when they're walking up and she tells the guy in front of her, like, "You got to get the fuck out of here right now." That was better.
Yeah. She's going to dive a lot into that. They've done a good job, I think, of laying out the potential for Min's character.
She's a season 2, season 3 kind of girl.
Yeah, and we see her, they make it a point to show her escaping the town too. So like we know that she's safe or is going to be safe and that she will have a role to play in the upcoming seasons.
Yeah, exactly. So the end of this scene is basically the horn sounding and Fal Dara begins to mobilize. Our Lord Agomar, who we know is the Lord of Fal Dara, the guy who calls all of the shots, he is getting debriefed on the situation. So we know that both Trollocs are amassing in Tarwin's Gap, Paul's favorite geographical location. And we know also that dark friends are in the city because somebody cut one of the drawbridges.
Let's fucking go.
This is me and Luke's guy right here. We fucking love Padan Fain. Every time we watch them together, we're just like, that's our boy.
He is fucking awesome in the show.
Incredible.
And I do also want to say that the concept of dark friend Borderlanders is like especially outrageous. So that's like the ultimate disrespect almost to be a Borderlander and be a dark friend.
Mm-hmm.
So big things that happen here is that Amelisa essentially is on the side that the gap won't hold, while Agamar is like, we're going to go defend it. And then Uno, the man with the eye patch, and Lord Yakota, the other man with the top knot that's with them, they get some special instructions and sent on some special mission.
I love Agomar. I'm sorry, I just want to slip this in right here while I can. I just think this speech just shows his character so well. His sister is just telling him like, "You're gonna die out there. Like you have to wear our ancestors' armor, like that kept them safe." And he's like, "Look, we're all gonna fucking die, and it's just a matter of how quickly we're gonna die. Like we're gonna try and buy time to get everyone out of here safely and let other people know about the Dark Ones coming and the Trolloc attacks." And just the growth that he admits to his sister. He's like, I should have listened to you fucking years ago when you said we should reach out for the Aes Sedai. This was just a great scene for a character that I just wish we could get more of in the series, but rest in peace to that man. He was amazing on screen, I thought.
Well fucking said. Agomar is such a great character. And yeah, he's just saying, even though we're going to die, we're sending birds, our fastest birds, messengers everywhere.
Speed
If
of
all
light.
we can do is just prepare Randland a little bit more for this Trolloc attack, we're going to fucking do it. So, and that's, I don't know if you know that, Paul, but that's what the continent is referred to by the fandom as Randland because it doesn't have a name. Like infamously, it doesn't have a name.
Yeah, we can say that now because
Yeah.
Rand's the Dragon Reborn revealed.
And that's
Yes.
why I said Perrin's Land too, because Luca told me that prior to this. I was like Perrin's Land.
Randland. Yeah, I thought this character had an interesting introduction of when Moraine showed up, and then he kind of tries to act tough and says like, "I don't need you here," and then Moraine kind of corrects him. So it was weird then because you didn't know what his attitude was, but exactly like when it was crunch time, he was like, "Hey, I'm not gonna be the one disgraced. Like the gap finally falls on my watch. Like fuck that. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna try my best to stop it." Um, I thought he ended up being a really really cool character. He was killing it too. It's hard to tell how much time passes during that battle, but like he is out there straight killing it, and like it starts with the sun up, and by the end the sun is down, so you can only assume he was out there just grinding for a while.
That's a great point that I didn't realize. They fought for a little bit there. But it just feels like Agomar had like 3 seasons worth of character development over the last like 2 episodes, which were like 4 scenes for him. And it was incredible. There's like every time like he gets brought up, he's just growing as a character. And we don't even like, and you slowly like learn about his backstory of just being like stubborn against the Aes Sedai. Now he's all in and is like listening to Moraine. And it's just so cool how Agomar was portrayed. I'm hoping beyond hope that he somehow lives. But
Yeah, Paul. We didn't see him die on screen, Paul. So
No,
yeah,
I'm gonna be pissed if he's alive.
I would be pissed too. But it seemed pretty
At this
like
point.
yeah, it seemed
I
pretty
mean,
absurd.
if Nynaeve can fucking live after being fucking,
But that's the point. We don't need a 5th death fake out in the finale.
I agree. Yeah, that. Yeah.
Like someone should die and he
True.
should be dead. Unfortunately, but I agree. They did a great job of nailing like that honorable, duty bound. Like we're the guys that were born in this spot. Unfortunately, but we got to see it all through.
Mhm.
Like how he just says, Tarmangaiden is here, the last battle, but it's not ours to win.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's fucking kudos right there. Because a lot of people would be like, nah, we want the glory and everything, but he's just like, let's just be the biggest speed bump in the world.
Also had a really cool line right before they charge, and where he says, "Let them buy every step they take with blood," or something along those lines. I was like, "That's badass." I was like, "Hey, you want to go forward? You're gonna bleed a little bit."
That's so cool.
That's one of the 5 great captains right there.
Love it.
So we talked about all of the lead up to the battle, and we actually talked a little bit of the battle right there. So the battle has begun. The Battle of Tarwin's Gap. Our Shinarans, led by Lord Agomar, ride out to the Gap Fortress. The Shinarans are really good on horseback. It's just a lot easier to fight Trollocs that way. So that's kind of a war style, for lack of a better terminology, because I don't fight wars. So yeah, they're good. They like horseback bows and lances because they fuck with horses. So we also learn that also the Gap Fortress looks pretty sick from the back with all of like the staircases that lead up. I thought that looked really cool. I don't know. I'm sure that's inspired by some type of like ancient fortress type, but it always amazes me like looking back at history and like the way people used to build buildings and like castles and shit like that.
The borderland structures look incredible. Even the cast, even Faldara looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks really sick. like Dave had mentioned too a little earlier, we find out that foreigners can leave, so Min dips out of the city like she should, and we get that the women are going to stay and defend this city while the men fight for the gap, which is just Borderlander as fuck. Annalise honestly is like, there's almost no kind of direction. She's just like, go to the armory and get a weapon, and like, we're just gonna do this thing.
One thing she says though, which I really like, because I kind of brought it up a couple episodes ago, when she says, "Light every torch in the city, there will be no shadow to hide fades tonight." And like I mentioned before, in the books, their whole thing is they don't allow hoods up, so you can never be a fade hiding. So I like that they gave you something that they're very aware of the idea of just like fades could just be anywhere, and they're fucking savages that behead bitches in like one swipe. So like you got to be ready for those guys.
Is it more of a thing that they can't, like, they actually can't be in light? Like, is it like a vampire kind of thing?
It's just
like,
so you can't hide.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just, I wasn't sure if it was like that's their weakness or something, because they did coincidentally also attack, I'm pretty sure, at night. Like, he didn't start, that one fade didn't signal the Trollocs to run until like the sun was pretty down.
Fades, it goes into it a little bit in the books, but I think it's honestly a criticism that it wasn't leaned into enough that the show might, and that they can like travel through shadows.
Okay.
So they can kind of like jump shadow to shadow. Who does that in Overwatch? Doesn't someone do that in Overwatch?
I guess
more,
but not really.
Like,
I was thinking Reaper.
Reaper, but that's not really shadows.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Obviously, I don't play a lot of Overwatch, so.
That reminds me of Shikamaru from Naruto.
Oh, see, not bad. Dude, your references are sick.
Out of this world.
Speaking of Naruto.
Nice. Ramen?
It is, yeah. I'm actually planning to have some for dinner, so. Back to the battle, because these guys won't have a dinner ever again. Before Agomar unfortunately dies, he kind of looks, actually, I'm not exactly sure if it's before he starts shooting the bolts or before he dies, but he says the quote, "May the last embrace of the mother welcome you home," which, if anyone remembers, was what Moraine said when they buried Karene at the beginning of episode 5. And Karene is from the Borderlands.
Okay, so that's what it was, because that's what I was not understanding, because I know I thought you were hinting at the fact that Moraine was, but I didn't remember that Moraine was from Kyrian, but okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay
that is
with
why. Karene is canonically Kandori. Kandor is a Borderland nation separate from Shinar, but that is why she said that.
I think you could have said that at the time and rested.
I just thought it would be better if we got to a point in the show when it said it, and then I could call it back.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I would have no idea what you're talking about after we see the actual place of like Faldara and stuff like that. It is really cool now looking back to think that Moraine was just such a bro to, bring her sisters kind of
their own rights, like how they
rituals into it.
And one last thing of the fight of the fortress itself, because we actually don't get a ton of them actually battling on the walls of the fortress. We kind of just get Agomar, unfortunately, getting pieced out by that spear. But straight out of World War Z, I thought, when the Trollocs are kind of just like human hopping on each other. Yep. I just thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah. The only way they would get through.
Yeah. I can only think of like the Trolloc that's just chilling on the bottom. It's like the bottom of the pyramid, and he's just standing there just screaming. It's like, yeah, we're doing it. I guess got it.
If you don't get crushed, it might be a better spot to be.
Yeah.
But not actually, because once they get through, they are confronted by our channeling ladies of the Fantastic Five, I guess you could say. So Amelisa kind of brings out a call before the battle of any woman that can channel, meet with her. They scrounge up 2 other people in the initial call, which is obviously better than nothing. But then Nynaeve and Egwene join them. So it's Egwene, Nynaeve, Lady Amelisa, and then 2 randos who we don't get the names of, unless the X-Ray did, but I doubt it. So they kind of are standing at the bottom of Faldara across this huge kind of open, vast field to the gap. And the Trollocs kind of pour over the fortress. So now it's kind of go time for our ladies. Lady Amelisa initiates the process of them linking, which is what happened at the end of episode 4 when all the Aes Sedai still Loghain. But you'll notice that it looks a little bit different. And I think that is because in the preview for this episode, they bring back the quote that Moraine says to Amelisa that you studied a little bit at the tower, but like wasn't enough to become a full Aes Sedai. So I think that's just a hint that she wasn't a full sister and fully trained. She also gets a little bit drunk on the juice, as when they first link, she first gets hit with all the power and is like, oh my gosh, like this is fucking a lot of power. She gets to display that power when the Trollocs come through, sends out an enormous shockwave of power and lightning that kind of levels the Trolloc horde, but ends up being too much for our two randos, unfortunately. So they burn out fairly quickly. But then Amelisa can't let go because she's such an amateur with the power, which leads to a little bit of a problem for Nynaeve and Egwene.
I gonna be honest, I did not overly enjoy this particular scene that much. I like how it helps though that you did mention that the preview was talking about Lady Amelisa and how she was a failed Aes Sedai, and that maybe if we go back and if she did become one, maybe then she wouldn't have been able to kill those two other people as well as Nynaeve temporarily. But I don't know, this just kind of felt really strange to me. I get that getting closer to the one power would make you very like drunk on power kind of thing, and it just felt a little weird to me. I wasn't crazy about this scene per se. I like the showing of the linking and how it is able to wipe out tens of thousands of Trollocs, but the aftermath is where I'm kind of just like, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it, I guess, after what you had mentioned, but I wasn't a big fan.
This scene sucked, but it was sprinkled with really good things. That's pretty much how I view it.
Yeah.
And like one, just at face value from a production TV standpoint, when she initially links and she has like the lightning is going out everywhere, it looked amazing. It had the epic music. All that's fine. And exactly what you're saying, Kyle, I was actually really about the idea of her not being able to let go of the power because it was just so much going in her. And I think it's kind of supposed to be a parallel to what happened to the Queen of Manetheren.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. Now that you say that, they did kind of put forth that idea.
Yeah, exactly. It was brought up early enough that that's pretty much what I envisioned in my head, except the Queen of Manetheren was that, except a trained Aes Sedai with a bunch more power. So just think of that, just scale it up a bunch. So that part was all fine. But yeah, I thought this was like really stupid. It took away so much because at the same time, this is what Rand is supposed to do in the books. He's supposed to just pop in and save the fucking day, not knowing what he's doing, explosion of power. And it's supposed to highlight how epically strong the dragon is. And they just give it to the girls for some reason. I don't know about all that. But yeah, like, and then of course the fake out death is like the worst thing ever that they did. But
I genuinely thought Nynaeve died for a sec. I was freaking out.
Especially with Min's prophecy. Like we get her dying, and I would have been fine with her just being dead. I mean, I know she I know she still has a role to play. It's kind of like fine, but with Min's fortune telling and I just was really expecting her to stay dead, kind of, to be honest, I guess.
I stop watching the show if they actually killed her. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would
I'm glad they didn't kill her. But I just, Paul's pointed that he thought she was actually dead is kind of the whole issue.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Is that
like if you were just kind of watching and say you weren't consuming any other outside content, which should be the goal of the show, should be to portray the concepts and the rules of the world without having to consume outside content to actually truly understand. Everything should just kind of be supplemental when you go listen to podcasts and things like that, at least in my eyes, for the most part. But this just makes it seem like you can bring people back from the dead with the one power, when that's explicitly stated multiple times in all of the books that is one thing that, like, you cannot heal death at all. But it makes it seem like Egwene, because there was weaves coming out of Egwene into her, which then makes her, like, the burnout go away.
So that was one of my 3 things about this scene that I had liked / observations, was that was one of them at the very end, is the weaves coming from Egwene, or is it coming from like her locket, the one that Moraine used to like kind of help her train? Because it looks like it's coming straight out of the locket.
I mean, I think that question, the locket is kind of like a lot of people who aren't tower trained have like objects that help it make it easier to like use the power.
Because aren't they just angry elves?
No, I think it's like Moraine has that, like, I think it's called a Kadara, like, chain thing that she wears, that jewel thing.
That's not an angry elf.
I don't believe so, no. I mean, I could be dead wrong, but I just think like a lot of people that aren't trained but like are using the power sometimes have little objects and tricks that help them channel. I just think that's what that might have been.
Okay, I didn't know if it was like remnants of Moraine channeling when she
Oh.
was helping her, like kind of
No.
introducing her to the channeling, like what was that, episode 2 or whatever.
I would be
Um,
shocked if that's what it was.
because it really does look like. I mean, I get that her necklace is hanging at her center of mass, like where the weave would come from, but maybe it was just a coincidence overlap. Two things that I did like from the scene though, like how they introduced kind of, I don't know what to call it, like group channeling. They
Well,
introduced you
that was
linking
in
up
episode
together.
4.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying they introduced it in episode 4,
Mhm.
and then it came back, and it's not like they're throwing this in our face right at the beginning for a huge, finale. They've shown us bits of this before, so it's not like, oh, they're pulling this out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then I liked how they linked up in episode 4. I liked how they did it here. I also loved that Nynaeve had like the densest weaves coming out of her.
Mhm.
Like everybody going to Amelisa, like the two randos, you could barely see it, and then you get to Egwene and Nynaeve, and theirs is like a little bit thicker, and you could just tell it's because they're more powerful naturally, and it's almost like they're compounding on each other.
I
It's
was
like
trying
magicians.
to pause it and see. I couldn't count it that it was more. I know Nynaeve and Egwene had more than the others, obviously. I couldn't see if Nynaeve had one extra or not because of how they moved.
Mhm.
I don't know if either you saw, but it looked to me like it could have just been like trick of the camera, but it looked like Nynaeve had at least one more strand going into her, which would make sense. But I also can't confirm that.
I mean, she's the beast, so yeah, it would make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
They also do a weird thing where it's like Nynaeve like almost takes over Egwene's position in the link when she grabs her and like she starts to burn out quicker and Egwene is fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, if I'm honest.
Just I like what
It
you
just
said though.
seems like another kind of like broken rule thing that maybe will never become a thing again, but just needed to happen for convenience sake to set up this narrative or like this kind of emotional fake out death thing, which seems like it's only there for drama's sake,
Mm-hmm.
which is
That's
just
the problem.
frustrating.
That
Yeah.
is totally the problem.
I agree with you, Kyle. It's like I would have felt better if it didn't feel like Nynaeve was actually dead there. Like if they at least gave her like signs of just being like mortally injured, then I think the scene would have been a lot better for me in the sense that okay, they didn't just resurrect her from the dead, but
Yep.
it did feel like Nynaeve in that moment was dead, and there was nothing that Egwene was going to be able to do to save her. But they do, so that was probably my biggest gripe. That's really it.
Having said what I just said, I do think that they're going to make it into a plot line that actually happens in the books with Nynaeve, which is going to, I think, also tie into when she says that she can't hear the wind anymore when she started the channel. I think it might have a purpose. I think that there were much better ways to get to that purpose than having a fake out death, especially after in this episode, and we're going to talk about it, like at this point in the episode, Moraine has already had her dream sequence fake out death. At the end of the episode, we get some people that are dead, but they're not going to be dead. So it's kind of just like when I watch the season finale, I don't want to be stacking fake out deaths.
Mm-hmm. And caught this if you want, Kyle, but is that with being as vague as possible? Is the whole Nynaeve thing just the angry thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what it's going to play into.
Makes sense.
And it's going to be like she has an obstacle for her when she learns to channel as a true Aes Sedai in the traditional sense, instead of doing like, if you notice when she channels, she has the big explosions of power. She never uses like actual weaves besides this point when kind of Annalise is channeling through her and using weaves. I think it's all going to come together. The whole fake out death thing is just trash in my opinion.
It's the worst trope there is.
Yeah. And
Looking
then we
Oh,
at
have
you,
the end.
Oda Sensei.
Yeah. And but I feel like, what's so funny is I literally had this conversation with myself in the shower this week because I knew you were going to bring that up. And I just think that it plays better in One Piece just because One Piece is just like a goofy, like cartoon.
Yeah.
But like, this isn't like that, we don't.
And they don't really do it in the books, which you shouldn't do
Yeah.
it in the books. Yeah.
It's just, and we're going to get another one in season 2 probably. Like it's just bad. It's just,
yeah.
Whatever. Tomato, tomato, tomato for all of my TikTok users.
Time for the highlight of the episode.
Yeah. So moving away from the Wonder Girls and their channeling spectacular, we move back into, obviously this is not in chronological order, but just easier to break them into these buckets. So we move back into the city and a little bit back in time. Perrin and Loyal obviously don't go to the ladies channeling convention. They are kind of stuck inside the city. Perrin is lashing out at this point because he feels helpless and useless, which
He should.
yeah, at least he's self-aware. That's nice. Very
Yes.
meta of him.
Freaking out about the Way of the Leaf this is the third time he's brought up the Way of the Leaf since
Yes.
it got introduced.
And I'm okay with them keeping highlighting that internal struggle, but
Mhm.
but it doesn't really end up coming to anything, which is a little frustrating.
You know what's
But
funny?
doesn't that explain why he's there doing nothing? He's trying to stick with the Way of the Leaf.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess it's just frustrating. Sorry, there's a cough drop in my mouth. It's just frustrating, I guess, to watch it on screen. I
Yeah.
don't know. As someone who loves Perrin, that's obviously a very biased opinion.
It's funny. Listen, now that I'm thinking about it, it's just funny listening to Perrin talk about the Way of the Leaf and Peace, because of our Emmonsfield 5, I'm pretty sure he has the highest kill count of anyone by far. Like, he's killed all those white cloaks, like his girlfriend, and he's like all preaching this peace. And I just think it's ironic coming from the guy who's killed the most in the show.
90F has a decently high body count at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. This, like, I think they just did Perrin so dirty season 1 because he just doesn't really have any area to shine. It seems like he's always just kind of not baggage, but he's just kind of like along for the ride. Like, he always is questioning the actions that someone else or like they're doing. Like, he's always like, oh, but like they're coming for us. We can't just sit here.
Mhm.
And then another line, he's like, oh, we can't just leave them. And then even right here, he's like, oh, how can we just sit here while everyone else is willing to die? And it's like, bro, just do something then. Just don't sit there questioning
And
everything.
that's what Loyal does. I mean, Loyal is literally like, dude, if what I've learned is people who are feeling helpless and useless, all you got to do is just ask, like, what can I do to help? Which is very, again, like Kyle said, meta of him to just sit down and just slap him in the face and just be like, yo, just ask, just go to anyone and be like, what can I do to help? And so
I also like how when Perrin said that line, you know, how can we just sit here?
oh, yeah.
Loyal's like, well, I'm standing. So.
Yeah, that's very, very loyal of him.
Luke loved that line.
I laughed out loud all 3 times I watched it.
It's so good.
Yeah, Loyal has been, for the little that they've given him, it's been very good.
And Perrin reacts the same way I feel like Rand would react to talking to Loyal if he had said that. Just like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, we're not. It's not legitimate. You know, it's just all metaphors.
So their way to help is they meet up with Uno, and Lord Yokota is the other man's name, who got sent on that secret mission during the whole debrief before the battle. And they are in the throne room digging up something that's underneath the throne itself. We get a nice little glory to the builders when they see Loyal.
You were
That was
asking
cool.
for it.
Yeah. I'm
like
glad I
that.
mentioned it on episode 7 and then it happened here, because
Yeah.
now it's like I seem kind of cool. So
Because they did it. Because they did it at a moment too, where it's like they had to really get this thing out of there, and they took time to literally say "Glory to the Builders" to him.
So they couldn't have done it in the hallway. Whatever.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they didn't know he was an Ogier at the beginning. Now word is spread. Now they're like, holy fuck, that's a builder.
They all
Glory
need
to the builders.
glasses, and they're just like, "Who's that thing in the
Listen,
background?"
Uno has one eye, but I'm sure he could tell an Ogier from a fucking human. Excuse me. Cough drop, almost swallowed it. That would have been bad.
That would have been great.
So that's a quick little scene, and then a scene that happens inside the city, but separate from this, which will end up making sense at the end of this little bucket, is that Padan Fain is now in the city with 2 Fades.
Sir Padan Fain.
Okay. Are you a dark friend yourself? Jesus, I don't think
I
I'd ever
love
call him
Fain.
sir. So he flashes. Wow, that's not the word I meant to use, but he uses the catchphrase or secret code. The Kingfisher flashes above the pond to gain access to the secret storeroom. This is a really nice book callback. So if you remember from, I believe it's episode 7, our deep dive episode, when I mentioned that Rand calls Lan an onion because he recites poetry, this is a callback to that scene. So the poem that Lan actually is reciting is the rose petal floats on water, the kingfisher flashes above the pond, life and beauty swirl in the mist of death. And Agilmar actually comments in the books that, yo, bro, like that's one of my favorites as well. Like, nice. And they have a little moment. So like it makes sense that in Agilmar's city, that would be a catchphrase,
Yeah.
a line from his favorite poem. I thought that was a nice little book callback there. And like Luke mentioned earlier, the Fae just kind of fucked those 2 chicks up, which is very unfortunate.
I'm interested to know I don't know if this could be told, like this answer can be given to me, but I'm just interested to know how Padan Fain would know that. Like, is he from this area? Like, how would he know the code specifically? Did he torture someone to get it out of them? Like, I was just thinking,
That's my headcanon as of right now.
is that he's from here or he just
No, that
murdered someone?
he probably just tortured someone into it or something.
Got it. Yeah, but
It's got to
Padan
be
Fain
either
is
that or another dark friend, like a Borderland and dark friend who would know that, just gave him the information. Because they all have a somewhat of a network and a very like loose hierarchy. Obviously, Padan Fain has a little bit of power as these fades are listening to him. I think that's the idea they're trying to get across.
I just can't get enough of him. His confidence is just incredible. Like when those chicks open the door and he's just kind of posted up, he's just like, he's like, he knows this is going to be a breeze for him. Like his mission here, he knows nothing's going to go wrong for him. And I love that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And moving more into his mission, and I guess obviously Uno and Yakota's secret mission, because they're about to converge together into one, we find out that they've been digging for a chest that has inside of it the Horn of Velir. First time we've heard of this, a mythical object that is to be blown at the last battle to call the pattern's greatest heroes to stand at our side. And I'm just curious, Dave and Paul, what you guys think about the introduction of this new item and kind of the description that was given about it.
That's crazy. Sounds like when you blow it, all the avatars, all the past avatars will come and help fight. Like when she says like the pattern's greatest heroes, it makes me think of like all the heroes that could have been, not all the heroes that are alive now in the pattern. I could be completely wrong, but I was thinking that sucks that, Padan Fain grabbed it. I mean, that was supposed to be for the dragon. That was supposed to be for Rand. And, Padan Fain's walking off with it. So I have no idea what that could possibly do in the wrong hands. Like, if it's in the wrong hands, can it get the pattern's greatest villains and bring them back? Like, that would be crazy.
Yeah. To go off what Paul said, I think it'd be really cool to, like, if it had some kind of like get in touch with the last avatars kind of thing. Like I imagine like the 99 companions might be a part of that callback as well. This thing after my second rewatch, it's just easy to see that this thing was the Dark One's objective the whole time. Because even when he gets Thanos snapped out of existence, like he's smiling, and that's at the same moment that Padan Fain is grabbing this thing. So to me, this thing is more important than even just killing the Dragon Reborn in this moment. Like this thing is just going to be the object for the next few seasons, and it's just cool seeing it.
Again, Kyle, caught me if I'm saying too much, but I feel like we can talk about it a little bit now. But I think the horn is one of the coolest objects, like in Wheel of Time. And the second book is called The Great Hunt, which is just a reference to talking about the legend of like hunting for the Great Horn. So that's going to be a main part of season 2. But I'm sure you would probably agree, Kyle. I kind of hate that it was just under the throne in Feldara.
I'm not crazy, that they knew where it is and were sitting on it. I think it
didn't matter that it was there. It could have been there, but if they shouldn't have known, like it should have been lost and like hidden, because the whole purpose in the books is that it's at the eye of the world. That's one of the things that they take away from the eye itself, and that makes it more epic because the eye is something that nobody can really get to. It's lost. But the fact that it was just kind of sitting under Agamor's ass the whole time feels a little weird.
I guess it does kind of put a lot of clout on the Shinarans and the Faldarans, I guess, specifically, in that they sat on it. Because it's like a very known thing, like the Horn of Velir, and if you get it, you're going to be like an absolute legend. You might actually get tied to it and be one of these pattern greatest heroes. So I guess it's kind of a shout out to them that they had the self-control to hide it the whole time. But I agree. I mean, I don't love the idea that, like you said, Agamor was just sitting his ass on it. But as long as we're getting the hunt, that's really what matters to me.
Yeah.
One other thing about the scene that I was a little upset about, Perrin sees Padan Fain and walks away. And then when he comes back, they're like already dead. I kind of wish they showed Uno, because you said he was a fan favorite. I wish they kind of showed him throw down a little bit with the fades, see, if they actually put up a fight, or if they were like the women and just got beheaded in like 1 second and didn't stand a chance. Because I haven't seen too much of the fades, besides like Tom Maryland fighting one. So I really do want to see how like fast or or how skilled they are.
The
Doesn't matter
fades?
though, because they all dead. Yeah.
Well, the fade caught Tom's knife, and you
Tom's
saw how
knife, yeah.
fast he moved. So that's at least a little bit. But you're right. I think it's actually kind of smart because eventually, when you do see them throw down, it's going to be a little bit more of a like moment rather than to them taking out side guys. Because you've seen them behead one shot, like they're fucking strong and they got
Yeah.
clout in the Dark One's army. So
It's like, does a human stand a chance?
yeah,
I do
guess.
agree, Paul. Though I think that the whole like editing sequence of it was kind of garbage, for lack of a better term. I guess just to walk through very quickly is that we get the box and we're like, let's go, and then Perrin kind of hears Fain and shit, so he walks out into the hallway, gets bamboozled. As he comes back in, everyone's laying on the ground, kind of already stabbied.
Makes eye contact with Perrin as he stabs Loyal. Like,
just what I was gonna say. Rest in peace. I'm so sad that Loyal got stabbed. Like, Loyal is just an innocent bystander. Glory to the builders. Come on, and you're just gonna off him.
Well, see, this is what Loyal's not dead.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, I mean, he's not dead. They show him moving a little bit at the end. He's filming scenes for season 2. That's like another fake out death. Like, he's totally not dead.
But also, can't you assume Uno's not dead too? Because he was moving around.
Yeah, I don't think Uno's dead either.
I need to tell Emily. We were so upset. I need to get.
Yeah. I mean, I just that's another thing that I have an issue with. Did you notice what weapon Padan Fain has?
Yes, he has the dagger that Matt had. Or are you talking about like?
So he is using that cursed dagger.
Oh, it's the same dagger?
Yeah, you see him when he sheathes it. It has the red ruby thing on the end of it. They like kind of zoom in on it real quick. So
I thought it was just like there was a few of these daggers, and it just if you had one of these daggers, it was a mark that you were a dark friend. It was the same one.
Yeah,
that's nuts. Because the last time we saw it, Land just kind of threw a cloth over it, and he was like, "I want to go dispose of it." So interesting.
I'm sure this is why you're bringing it up, Kyle, because that's both a problem and not really a problem yet. Because the whole thing is that dagger, when Matt uses it like early in book 1 to cut someone, it fucks them up. Like they get corrupted by taint and they like start like freaking like bubbling up. Like it's a bad death. So the fact that he used it to slice Loyal and nothing really happened either means one, that dagger's not going to have that effect, because I don't think we've seen Matt use it on anybody. So that isn't breaking any lore yet, but it means that if they do something weird with it in the future, this was a lore break in hindsight.
Yeah, and I think that it almost has to end up being that lore break, and where it just happened to Loyal and then it'll be different in the future.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather it be that at this point versus it not having any type of effect ever. It's just another thing where it's like, why? But I love that
he could have just had a fade do it and it would have solved that issue.
Even that though, like that's another thing where Uno is like gets stabbed and is like, they kind of show Lord Yokota as like lifeless eyes staring out. So like pretty much it seemed like they confirmed that he was dead, while Uno and Loyal they give movement to. But getting stabbed by a Fade's blade is another like
it's the same thing. You're
as
right.
well. I mean, they have that. They're made in a special forge. They have like this tainted corruption poison on them. So, and they could easily get healed by who? It would have to be Egwene. She's the only person left in town that can channel. Is that a thing going to be a thing in season 2? Will it be something they skip over? I'm not exactly sure. Just some small things in this scene that I guess it's better to get them out of the way that we don't like, because there's a lot to like in this scene. I think the last thing is that just kind of like a Perrin and Padan Fain face off. I didn't notice this when I watched, but consuming outside content, apparently it's very obvious that it was kind of supposed to be Matt. Like if Barney Harris was still around as Matt, this would have been Matt's role.
Oh my God, that would have made so much more sense. He probably would have gotten the knife in front of him and had like a talking point about it.
Yeah.
How does Padan Fain get the knife back again?
Don't know.
The weird editing.
Okay, so that would make way more sense then if this was Matt's character. And I'm not gonna knock him. Like even with it not being Matt, it's still for the most part felt like it flowed very well. At least from my perspective, it still felt like it was just, besides the question of how did Padan Fain get the knife back, it's just maybe he did run into Matt when Matt was leaving and they had some interaction we'll get in season 2, but I thought it flowed really well still.
It definitely would make more sense to me if it was Matt, because one of my complaints was, Padan Fain is telling him, you're Tavir and all 5 of you are connected. Usually there's 1 or 2 in a generation, but there's 5 of you.
That was cool.
That's crazy. Like we need the dark one. We need balance. So that means some of you are going to turn dark. And like Padan looks at Perrin and like Perrin picks up the axe and he gets so mad. He's like, oh, like the tiniest push and you pick the dark. And it's like, well, is defending yourself to not be killed and killing that person, is that technically dark? Like that didn't make sense to me at all. But if that was supposed to be Matt, somebody, you flash to showing him kind of falling into the dark, that would have made so much more sense. Just because I don't see Perrin kind of going that way right now. Nothing has led me to believe that.
But it does also, again, if you want to stick with the theme of the way they leave, it shows that Perrin's will. That could be directly talking to Perrin's belief in the way they leave. Like he, even with like the littlest push, he was willing to abandon that, even though he was kind of willing to abandon that when he was talking to Loyal. But
Okay.
yeah, everything that Fain's saying here was so good. You just delivered like all the good information there, though. The once in a generation, but 5 of you are from the same village. He's like, you think I go to Beltane for you fucking sheep fuckers, basically? He's like, there's a goddamn reason we're here. And
I wish that's exactly what he said.
I know, right? But this is all happening, of course, when you watch the episode in parallel with what's going on with Rand. And he's saying, like, yeah, we brought all the Trollocs to Emmons Field not to kill you guys, but to basically bring you to the Dark One. So this is when the realization is starting to kind of click that maybe everything that's been happening, even at the Eye of the World, is part of the Dark One's plan to kind of start making things happen. And I think Fain is such a good voiceover narrative to be driving that home because, dude, he's just the best. He's just slays.
Love Padan Fain, but let's break it down too here while Paul brought it up. While Padan's kind of talking about the light and the dark.
I just love the first name basis.
Yeah, because we call him Fain, don't we?
You call him Fain?
Yeah, I just Padan.
Padan.
Me and the homie Padan.
We do get a shot of Matt looking terrible, and this is what me and Luke were talking about while watching the episode the second time. I'll ask this to Paul. Paul, where is Matt in the moment where Padan Fain is talking about light and dark? Where do you think Matt is?
I have no idea. My original thought was he was going to go back to his sisters.
Okay.
But that didn't look like he looked like he was in like a big city. It wasn't like a small town.
Before I ask Kyle, because Kyle might have a little more information, what me and Luke had pieced together. At first, I had thought that he went back to Shadar Logoth because the town that he was in was completely like there was no signs of life really. It was really dark. It just had all the vibes of Shadar Logoth. However, Luke brought it up that where he was walking it looked exactly like where him and Rand were watching Logain through the town. Like it looked like Tarvalon, just the streets of Tarvalon. So, but again, it just had the vibe of Shadar Logoth, so I'm not sure if it's either he's at Tarvalon or there.
And my guess is definitely Tarvalon still. And it could be him gearing up to leave, even though it looked like he was kind of entering it. But I saw that there was torches lit everywhere. And I think that's a giveaway that Shadar Logoth. What do we call
Shadar
it?
Logoth.
Fuck that name.
I love it.
We decided that I thought that there's nothing. There's no life there. There would be no light even by magic. So I thought that was the giveaway that it had to be Tarvalon. But Kyle, do you know anything?
I think the torches is like a really nice eagle eye of like understanding the rules of the world. So I think that's a good catch. But I just think the day giveaways it shows the White Tower.
Okay, yeah,
that's what we weren't sure.
But there's also a tower that looks like that Rand and Egwene stand in Shadar Logoth when they're looking out. So that was the only counterpoint. And I did see people that were, I guess, just instant reacting on Twitter or whatever, guess Shadar Logoth. But through the second watching in the fire, I just thought it had to be Tarvalon, and it makes more sense because Moraine still. I feel like we have to see some sort of play out of Moraine's plan, sending the Red Aja after him, like in case they failed. So I hope that is like a season 2, episode 1, introduce the new actor, get a quick,
And also, that's just where his story leads him.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense that they set that up. It's also like reused footage of him, if you can't tell. But I mean, honestly, when I first watched, I thought it was Shadar Logoth, and then I looked at it and was like, oh no, it's
the White Tower. Okay, cool. Yeah. And that makes more sense. I like that better.
Yeah. So does anyone have anything else to say about Padan Fain in this scene?
that I love.
I just have something to say about Perrin, and I hope he gets a glow up in season 2. I hope something good happens to that guy.
Yeah, my only note for Perrin is this dude is just getting it railed in the ass all fucking season 1, just between his powers of like the wolves and like him killing his girlfriend, and then
It's
it's
his
just
wife, bro. Why do you keep saying girlfriend?
I don't know because they never got officially married, so it's not his wife. So
I thought they did.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
well, I mean, he says his wife, so
but yeah, I still have high hopes for Perrin because I think the actor is very good, and I think he's doing a very good job with what he's been given in his story. But I mean, I agree with Paul. I would love to see Perrin get a huge glow up, and I think it'll happen. Obviously, I mean, Padan confirms it also here, saying that Paul said, you know, 1 or 2. What do they call them? There's usually 1 or 2 Taviran, but now there's 5. So obviously, Perrin's going to have a part to play.
And 2 things I'll quickly say. One, directly off what you just said. That is a term that I think we've been saying it throughout this whole podcast, Taviran, but like that's said in episode 1 when Moraine says she's going to Emmons Field after they watch the first gentling of that random male. The male channeler says like there's Taviran there. So that's been in the like forefront for a while. It's just you finally kind of get a little bit more context of what that really means and how rare they actually are. But the only other thing I wanted to say, just a subtle observation, and this is more for book readers, and Kyle, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I thought it was interesting showing how subservient the Fades were to Padan Fain, because I thought it was supposed to be like that within the Dark One's army, like they're both pretty much on the same rung at this point where they don't fight, but they don't really fuck with each other, but at the same time, like doesn't want like Padan Fain doesn't control the Fades, right? Because they have the whole.
That's
There's
like
a couple things that happen.
It's an interesting part in book 2 that gets into a little bit of who would have the role here. Honestly, it's weird in the sense that it does kind of break the lore that the book 2 I tried to say shit sets up there, in that like at nighttime typically the Fades will have more control, while during the day Padan Fain is kind of more of a leader. But I think it's perfectly fine, honestly.
It's fine. Yeah, I like it better this way.
Yeah, Fain in reality, Fain has a very specific, unique position within the Dark Friend network and like a connection to the Dark One, and I think that they're doing a good job of showing that.
Yeah,
without having it happen exactly the way it happens in the books. So, I think they got the idea across, which was fine with me. And I do like how he says, "What my lord saw." I just like that they dropped that honorific from his mouth.
I want to see him fight. I know we already know he's very smart and stealthy. I just want to see if he can actually throw some fisticuffs, you know.
Yeah, it was quite the finale for Padan Fain. I couldn't really be any more happy with the way his storyline went.
He jumps the rankings. Different. He's without a doubt in my top 3.
Easily the most interesting character, I think,
without
that they've shown.
Easily.
Yeah. And
all right.
We'll see what happens with my boy. My boy. Okay. So moving into, I guess, technically the meat and potatoes storyline. I don't really even know, because like, it's like a little less action heavy, but a lot of shit happens. But so this is Rand and Moraine in their road trip through the Blight. I like how we talked in episode 7 about what we thought this was going to be like in any type of small talk. Really no small talk. Rand tries a little bit. Moraine's like, drink this. Like, don't touch anything. Fuck off, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was all business.
The first leg of their journey that they show us, the biggest thing that happens is that we see the 7 broken towers of Malkir. They use them as a landmark. Thought it was just a nice little toss out to the lore and kind of the geography of the world. We talked about it, I believe, on episode 7 of where Malkir is. Rand even mentions, hey, this is not where land's from. It looks like it's been that way for 1,000 years. Moraine chimes back with it's only really been maybe 40. Just really setting the stage for how crazy the Blight is. We run into that decomposing body. I mentioned also that people kind of try to test their mettle a little bit in the Blight, so that was a decent way to show that as well. But after we get our first leg of the journey done, we kind of stop to rest, and this is where Rand has his first dream of the episode.
This was fucking wild. I was sitting there like my first watch, and I'm just like, I'm making all these comments, and Luke's just sitting there quiet. I'm like, in my head, I'm just like, dude, say something to me, give me a sign, anything, because I can't believe Moraine just went down like that.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, what the fuck did you want me to do? No, dude, it's okay. She's not actually
It's all
dead.
good. I'm
The
just like-
fucking lead actress on the top of the call, she is not dead.
I needed my answers right in that moment. I was like so blown away. I thought it's just phenomenal scene rather, and this was probably one of my favorites. Is not only do we get that shock of Moraine just getting taken down so easily, the Dark One takes an arrow to the face, but it just pushes it in his face, and then we get the human form of the Dark One. And he looks incredible. I love the suit aspect or whatever he's wearing, like just the fancy outfit. It kind of reminds me of like My Hero Academia. The main villain is just constantly dressed very nicely, and it's just like I just like that touch to a villain where he's not just so like looks evil. He's just a well dressed guy.
You like a classy villain.
Yeah,
You don't
like a little class. That's
Dude,
what I
he is amazing. Everything to do with him is pretty much landed pretty damn well with me. And you know, there's a couple things they changed, of course, but I just thought the Dark One just like I didn't think they were gonna get rid of Eyes of Ember so early because that was like a really cool thing, but it would probably cost a decent amount of money. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I was gonna
Either
say all
way,
the CGI not worth it.
He looks good. That's all I'll say. I think he looks great, and just the way he talks to Rand, like he at least for book readers, like he did this thing right. He basically just keeps calling him Luce. He's like Luce Theron. Like that's what he does. He always is like, oh, Luce Theron. And then Rand always has freakouts. I'm not fucking Luce Theron. He's like, oh, Luce. Crazy
Yeah,
kid.
that's so
Stubborn as
like you.
always.
Yeah,
Classic
So
Luce.
loose.
I really like this scene. Just really reminded me of the Beast from the Magician's reveal. Like when
Yes.
because when you see the Beast and the Magicians, he's always had that like moth head of moths basically, and you don't really know that he is a human or was. And so just putting it to here when the Beast pulls the moths away, and then you see his actual face, it was just the same like terror. It's like even though they looked scarier in their prior form, just the fact that they look human kind of adds a layer of just scariness to them that damn, these people are just beyond us, you know.
Yeah. And there's two quick things I want to say because I'm going to steal Paul's thunder. I don't know. One thing I fucking absolutely love about Rand, and it's pretty hard to notice unless you kind of are looking for it, but he is so much better and kind of trope breaking at identifying when shit is like visions and not real. You always think he's like falling into it because that's typically this early into a series like of this epic they are. But like the way he is like constantly learning, I feel like he's always applying what he's learning, like about the dreams and knowing that they're so important. He tries to kill himself to wake himself up at the end of the sequence. Like I just really love Rand's like quick growth in understanding the weight of being the dragon and knowing like everything is going to be fucking lies. Like the Dark One's going to do everything in his power to fuck him up and then in turn fuck up the world.
He does that too in the next dream sequence.
Exactly. He does it
really cool.
twice this episode. And the other thing I noticed that I really freaking loved was after the fake out Moraine kill in the dream sequence, he looks at Moraine's body and like says to Rand, he's like, dude, like last time you came at me, you came with 99 of your companions who were all stronger than her, because that's pretty much what it was like, right? Like in the Age of Legends, everybody was a million times stronger than they were now. The power was capable of creating all the magical items at the time. So like you have to assume like there's such a drop off in power of even the strongest people now compared to what they were in the Age of Legends. And that like subtle comment, he's like, yeah, dude, you're showing up with her. She's weak as shit. Like you don't know how to channel. Come on, Luce. And then like he's just like, fuck off, you know.
That comment was so cool, just knowing that where the power is now is just not even close to what it was. Like
yes.
The only person I can imagine like is Nynaeve. It's like if you have a master Nynaeve and then 99 of them, like we haven't even met 99 characters in the show, let alone those who are all powerful as Moraine, if not stronger.
That's why we got to get a spinoff of the Age of Legends already. It's already in the works.
Pretty crazy. And yeah, and then the fact that those people failed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much did it all. Genuinely thought Moraine was dead for a second. Was freaking out. Me and Emily were having a heart attack because I thought she served her purpose of bringing him, to the eye of the world, and that was kind of it. Then you do kind of realize it is a dream. Love how he, commits seppuku just to wake up. Kimetsu no Yaiba, like all day.
Mm-hmm.
And what was my other thing? This was the beginning of me just thinking like, fuck, like The Dark One is so calm that you are like coming to him, and he already had the comment of last time he tried it, you had literally basically an army compared to this one Aes Sedai. Like, even though Moraine had a plan inside of a plan, which we get like Rand asking, it did feel like it was all going according to like the Dark One's plan. And then, going forward, uh, Dave already said it. It seems like when Rand does kind of give the final blow, he like smirks a little bit
Dude,
before he explodes.
fuck
So
yeah.
it's like it seems like this is kind of all what he wanted to do, which makes me nervous.
This is all the good stuff of the finale for me. That like I don't even care if some of it's changed. I just think it just hit, and I get why people that don't
Mm.
know the future love it.
I do like the blight taking over Rand a little bit. It starts to like take over his hand while he's sleeping, and he shakes it off real quick. I don't know if we brought that up, but it was cool. If you stay too stagnant, you will like become part of the blight.
And that explains how it continuously grows when the darkness starts taking over areas. Like that's how I'm envisioning it's going to take over Faldara, like slowly start growing over things because it's all dead.
It's just wild because it seems like now that I'm thinking about it, all of my favorite characters are villains, which I think is a good thing for a show to have. I just think if you can have a great villain, that just kind of puts the show another step further, because you can have your generic main characters who are good and want to fight for the good. It's the villains that you really kind of want to start piecing together and make them have their stories that can really elevate a story to the next one. And so the fact that I really am enjoying Padan Fain, the Dark One, the Dark Friends, the Fades, like the fact that I love all these characters. Yeah.
Or Maya.
It's just a testament to how great the show is going to be, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
I'm glad that you say that too, because I remember mentioning maybe episode 5 or 6 in that we don't really have any villains in the story up until that point, but they've kind of hit the pedal to the metal a little bit in 7 and 8 with Padan Fain and now the Dark One, which I think they needed to do. So I'm glad that it's been hitting for the two of you. A nice cheeky line that I liked that Luke kind of mentioned a little bit is when he takes the mask kind of off and he says like, it's so hard to have conversations with that thing. A complaint that a lot of book readers had was that when you see him in all the dreams, it's just the face and kind of the jump scares. But in the books, he is speaking to all of them and like getting inside their heads and like fucking with them a lot. And people were like, well, why isn't he talking? Like, he just seems like a caricature villain now. But I like that they kind of threw that line in there. Even if I don't love that he wasn't talking to them, I just think it's funny that they threw that in there, that like, it was the mask.
And then the only other thing I was going to say, the only other thing that's left really to talk about in this dream sequence specifically is Roose Bolton gets brought up, and they're talking about the Heron Mark sword. And that the Dark One knowing about the Heron Mark sword is enough clout, like that it did it for me. Like he's even aware that these swords are just special, like they're master swords.
And he knows Tam Althor's like whole name. Like he's not just like.
Did he say Tam Althor?
Yeah, he's literally. And then Rand's like, that's when Rand's kind of like, holy shit, like you know a lot about me. Like
the whole sequence was, he was like, oh, where'd you get that Heron Mark blade from? My father. Oh, your father's been dead a long, long time. Yeah, not referring to Tam Althor.
That is actually news to me. I mean, good verbal confirmation, at least even from a book standpoint, because I didn't know if Rand's real father was ever going to come into play, but that sounds like he's not. And I'm obviously fine with that because Tam is.
Yeah, I just think it was a nice kind of showing us how, like Luke had mentioned when we first started talking about this scene, in that he always kind of sees the dragon reborn and Rand as Lews Therin, but he's actually fucking with Rand al'Thor a lot in this scene when he brings that up and is saying all this shit, kind of taunting him about his dad, which I thought was kind of nice. And then, like we said, the scene ends with Rand committing seppuku to wake himself up like a fucking savage. There's a small issue of if that breaks lore with how you act in dreams. I think they will eventually address it. I think it's too early to
that
make
seems like a
conclusion.
Big issue to me, especially because I'm starting to dive heavy into that material in the books.
Yeah, I just, it's, to me, it's one of those many things at this point of the season and the series, which is a little unfortunate, I guess you could say, in that they do something where it's like, whoa, but then we'll be like, well, we have to just say, let's wait and find out.
Okay, because I'm hoping that, like, if Dream World, Teleron, you know, that thing?
Teleon Riyadh.
Yeah, that thing that I'll never, ever fucking learn how to say. Like,
I don't even know if I said it right.
Like, I thought, like, the whole thing is just what death is supposed to be real in it, right, or something like that.
Yeah, but
I don't know.
there's a difference between like
As
something. So
as you guys were talking, I'm just like I just assumed what the issue was that if you kill yourself in a dream kind of thing, like you die in real life. And maybe I'm just think of my own thoughts on it is just that maybe because he was aware he was in a dream and that he knew that it was and that him stabbing him was just enough of a shock. Whereas if you didn't realize that was a dream and you got beheaded, maybe that kind of shock of you're actually dead kills you, but that's just me
It's
thinking.
just not worth, I guess,
Yeah,
talking
it's not worth
further
it because
about
I don't
yet,
know,
but
and you guys
we'll
do.
see what they do. It's going to be a season, I think, season 3 thing, maybe.
yeah, I just think it's fun for us to bring it up now, and then it'll
Sure.
be something that we can talk about in the future because the show will eventually get into. Moraine says a lot that dreams have power.
Yeah.
Doesn't really imply anything beyond that or any specifics.
Mhm.
So the show will get into it. We'll get into dream stuff, which I think is really fun, and they've been doing somewhat successfully. In my opinion, I think The Witcher has done it really well as well in their own right with making it very disorienting, but I think that the show has done a decent job of showing what dreams can be like. Rand awakes from this dream because, like we've just said like 18 million times, he stabs himself in the gut, and he kind of awakes with a little bit of an attitude. He starts grilling Moraine on what her plans are. I think part of this has to do with that now he's a little bit afraid of he's had this direct contact with a human face. Like Dave said, it's a little bit more intimidating. So he kind of asks her, "What are your plans?" And she's being pretty tight-lipped, which is funny because he was also tight-lipped with her in this very scene when she's like, "What happened?" And he's like, "What's up with you?"
Was just gonna make that comment that they just totally flipped it right there.
She pulls out in response. She charts, I guess, explains some things, and she pulls out a Sa Angreal. She names it as a Sa Angreal. She explains the concept of a Sa Angreal. We've done it a little bit on the episodes that we've done, but just a little bit of a refresher.
Let's run it back, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically just a means to increase the amount of power that you can channel. We've seen in this episode, not at this point, but we've discussed it on this Bingetown episode, that if you pull in too much, you can burn out and die. Dying actually is a little bit of a change from the books. In the books, when you burn out, you just cut off your connection to the source. You don't actually die, but I don't mind the stakes being raised that way, so I'm chill with it. I guess Angreals are just less versions of Sa Angreals, and then Tear Angreals, which you've seen, I believe, in episode 5, have a very specific purpose. They do one thing that isn't increasing the amount of power that you can channel through. They do other very niche things.
That was the portrait, right?
And
Angreal, yeah.
It's important to know that all of the Angreals, San Angreals, and Terra Angreals were created during the Age of Legends when it was possible to use both sides of the powers to come together and make these objects, meaning that you can't make them anymore. So every single one of them, I don't know if that's completely confirmed, is a relic from the Age of Legends. And then also, Paul, I don't know if you caught this, I already told Dave off pod, but the specific San Angreal that she's using here is in the opening scene of episode 1. Like when Moraine's getting all ready, she says, I already brought up that quote when she's saying the women are here to pick up all the pieces. As she's getting ready to, like, the next scene directly is, I think, the gentling of that first male Aes Sedai. So she's getting ready, and the one thing she does is you see her pick up this San Angreal and wrap it. So I've been personally waiting since scene 1 to see what that was, because I don't even remember if that was a book thing. I think that was just like if you were paying close enough attention, it came from, like, she's had it this whole journey.
There's a chance that it's a specific one from the books, that has meaning. We'll see if it confirms it, but I do like that this is another, this is another parallel from episode 1, and that they're kind of now
this
tying
is a
back into
wild
the
tangent that I just reminded me of because it's very similar. Does that mean that the thing that Matt stole off the dead Aiel is anything? Was that also an angry, like a magical item?
piece.
Yeah, is that something?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so it was just supposed to be valuable.
You say gem, and it just makes me think of maybe it was an Aes Sedai, like not golden part of the ring. Maybe it was like the actual gem piece that he had stolen.
That'd have been a fat one.
Oh, okay. Was it that? I don't really remember vividly what it was, but I just remember it being like a blue tint to it or something like that.
This is a fairly nitpicky question, but say, like going back to the White Cloaks confronting Moraine with Lan and everybody for the first time, like she took off her ring and gave it to Lan to hide. If she still had that on her, would the White Cloaks, like, do you think Valda would be able to tell that it was San Angreal?
No. It would just look like a random statue of a whatever it is.
Okay,
To him, you would only be able to know what it was if you could channel.
gotcha.
Yeah, I think some of them are purposely disguised that way. We'll see later on that it will become a plot point of. It might even end up being a thing of us being like some things are hidden as them, things like that. So like some of them are designed to be very inconspicuous. And I totally lost my train of thought there. But I do want to say that I think it's funny that my room has gotten progressively darker throughout this entire episode. So
I had to put the lights on.
yeah, I
People
noticed
won't be
that.
able to see you.
I don't have that luxury. My room's not as well lit. That's all I got.
It makes it worse.
I think it makes it worse too. Yeah, it makes me more in shadow. So hopefully we can finish this.
Kyle's a fade. He's moving through the shadows.
By the time, yeah, I'm powering up in the darkness. Thanks, Dave. All right. Shit. Where are we?
Right after the sangria.
Yeah. So she explains to him basically that you're going to use this. You're going to channel as much power as you can through it, and you're going to put that motherfucker back in his prison. And Rand's like, "Oh, okay, that's it. Thanks." He then confronts her that so he kind of tells her, not even tells her, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place right now. But he basically says, you thought it was Egwene, didn't you? And kind of explains why he thinks so, and then admits that he also thought so. So, Paul, there's a little feather in your cap that that Rand and potentially Moraine, who is the most knowledgeable character in the story at this point, thought it was Egwene.
Yeah, I just identify with Moraine in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So we continue on our travels. We get a nice jump scare with a broken log. It was just, I think, a funny little way to show tension. Because honestly, I mean, the dark one, we have the dream, but they never really fall into any actual danger, I feel like, in the play. I don't know if this was a nod to that, just like still building that tension up, but that's a thing that happens.
Really quickly, just want to point out, Moraine looks like shit, dude. They've just been traveling and traveling. Her hair is all over the place. She looks like she's gonna collapse.
Yeah, she looks god awful. That wig is like fucked up.
And he also makes a note to Rand, just saying, I'm not going to teach you the one power, because if I do, it'll just, the more you use it, you'll just get closer. So she's really just saving him to use his full power for that one moment against the Dark One. Like, won't even teach him anything right now.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting line. I couldn't tell if it's she make it seem like she can't teach him, or like because she won't teach him. Like, she doesn't want to teach him because he'll go mad. When in reality, it's that she can't teach him.
Oh, okay. Because he does counter, and he's like, "Look, whatever happens here, this is it. Like, if I have to go mad, like, I'm willing to do that if you just train me." So it makes sense that she can't, not that she won't teach him here.
I mean, that could be a change that they're making, but it's definitely a thing that, like, women can't teach a man how to use the power because it's so different for the two of them that they might even have a line where it's like trying to teach a fish to fly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Opposite gender how to use the power, because it's just two different things.
That makes sense. I like that.
I hope they keep that. I guess fingers crossed. Who can say? And like Dave said, Rand kind of responds in that he doesn't really give a fuck that he's going to go mad. He doesn't anticipate living past this mission, which is kind of showing his resolve as the Dragon Reborn. He's really basically just accepted his fate at this point. She then tells him a story, how kind of to reassure him that no matter what happens, even if I can't teach you, you're going to use the power when push comes to shove. You're going to get faced with this much danger. So the power is going to come out of you. You're going to reach for it. It's going to be there. You are going to grab it. She then gives a little bit of an anecdote of what happens to her in a similar situation. This actually happens in New Spring. It's not necessarily that she can't touch the power. She's just having trouble, like, using the power into weaves in, like, a certain way. So then she does kind of get fucked up by an Aes Sedai sister that kind of beats the shit out of her. And then she's good at using the power kind of after that, which is a little bit fucked up how it happens. But that is a nice little New Spring callback.
How they should teach people in Dragon Ball Z to go Super Saiyan. It's like, if you want to go Super Saiyan, let me just kick the shit out of you until you're on death's door, and then you'll unlock it.
I mean, doesn't Vegeta just go into like an asteroid shower and just like,
Yeah, he's
it's like,
basically
I'm
on-
either gonna die or become Super Saiyan 2.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's why I'm just saying, because in Super, it's that stupid thing where they're like, oh, just like feel around your back and you'll like just go Super Saiyan 2. It's like, yeah, no, just kick the shit out of her until she learns to go Super Saiyan 2.
I don't know if I think we, unless I just missed it, whatever Rand says in response to all of Moraine's wisdom, I thought was really rational because, she was just saying, yeah, you're going to go fucking crazy if every time you touch the power. Not only can I not teach you shouldn't touch it ever unless like your life's on the line, but he says, like, do you think I care what the fuck happens to me after today? Because he thought in his head, I'm going to kill the Dark One. And if I go mad doing it, at least like the world's saved. And I just thought that Rand's reaction to that was super mature at that time.
I really love Rand. Like from where he was episode 1 to bitching at Moraine for everything that she was doing to now just like accepting his fate and just being so calm with what he is about to go through. It's just, I really love his character progression as well here.
Yeah, now that you bring that up too, it is funny that he was the one that was so anti the whole thing and blew up at her in episode 2. And now it's the two of them that are forced to be on this journey and kind of coexist. So that's a thing. All right, the next thing that we see is we're finally here. We get to the Eye of the World, the namesake of the first book in the series and the namesake of this episode. The first thing they do when they get there is Rand says that, I know this place. So one thing that people have been saying online is that it is the Hall of the Servants, the place that we were in at the beginning. I don't believe that that's accurate, but I just think that's an interesting thing to think about, and that the breaking of the world scattered all of these places so far away. So now we have things that were almost in the same city are halfway across the world from each other almost. Just kind of going to show that level of devastation that happened. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's, if it plays into that concept, then I guess I could be okay with it.
Yeah.
So they show us rather that Rand is actually having memories of this place. Or I'm sorry, before we jump there, Moraine has some good parts here where she now, like Luke just said, Rand is coming to terms with the fact that he's going to die and go insane. Moraine now reveals that she knows that she's going to die because a big point of, I guess it's episode 6 and 7, is that anyone who's not the dragon is going to end up dying at the Eye of the World. Rand, it takes till now for Rand to be like, wait a second, you're not the dragon, so you're gonna die.
I'll give him credit too, because as a viewer, I also didn't really piece that together, because she was always saying like, it made it seem like she was talking about them as a collective group. Like it always felt like she was just going to be powerful enough to survive. So that realization came at a good time, at least from my perspective. It's like, oh yeah, like you are totally not the Dragon Reborn either. Like what's going to happen to you? So, and then more to Rand's character growth of him, just like he cares for Moraine right now. Like that's wild coming from where we were 7 episodes ago. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I was just going to say, because not to sound like I'm fucking licking Rand's boots because I freaking love the character, but like just the way
you were going somewhere else.
I was gonna go somewhere else. I was gonna go way fucking dirtier, but I pulled it back a little bit.
Right.
But I just love that Rand is so willing to evolve like this over this season. Like
it's Agomar vibes a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's just Agomar, except maybe he is Agomar. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just going from like hating her guts to pulling them out of Emmons Field all the way to saying like, hey, I'll die by myself. I don't need you to come with me. Like, please stay, survive. That was such a cool, quick line. But Rand's the GOAT, as you can tell.
How's that? Ooh, a little bit more light for me.
That's a little better. Yeah, there you go.
It's kind of blinding me though, so we'll see how long it can last.
People will take that just to see your face. So,
wow, that was very kind. I really appreciate that. You know, the past week's been a little tough for me. Okay, and a last interesting thing about this scene from Moraine's perspective is that she tells us that all records of the Eye of the World have been purged from the Tarvalin libraries by Dark Friends. So I took this as a subtle hint. Well, not even, I guess it's not a subtle hint, but like we've learned in this episode as well that there's Dark Friends in Faldara, in the Borderlands. There's Dark Friends now in Tarvalon. So this is really hammering this point home of like, these motherfuckers are everywhere. And they're up to some shady ass fucking shit. So we then get now confirmation, I'm going to use that word because they show us visually, that Rand does have access to these older memories. Lews Therin's memories that they show us. So we see Lews Therin and the Dark One kind of battling here in this area. I'm just curious with the two of Dave and Paul, what you guys were thinking when they kind of visually show this on the screen. We have Lews Therin versus the Dark One in this exact setting.
I wish they showed more of it. Obviously, it's going along with the sequences of Rand not being able to grasp the full memory. He's getting glimpses. Before he can grab onto it, he said that, the memory slips away. I thought it's cool, just your past self was here and you can kind of like have brief memories. Like if you've ever gone to like, I don't know, your childhood neighborhood from where you grew up and or some place like that, and you
Still
go in
there.
yeah, and you haven't been for a long time, you're like, wow, that's a weird feeling. So I can only assume it's like that times like 100.
Yeah, I really liked it. I liked the touch of the it's like a yin and yang symbol also on the floor that Rand particularly notes from his past, and there was a symbol, and it to me it was yin and yang, which is very symbolic of what's happening within Rand, and what's supposed to be happening within the Dark One is this battle for light and dark. So it was really cool. I really like seeing it. Like Paul said, I really wish we got a little bit more of like the actual fight itself.
I think it's also a literal interpretation of the two powers, like the black side being the male Aes Sedai, or the male power, and the white side being
just the perfect
Sedar.
symbol to represent everything that's going on in the story. Like it's also in the shape of a circle, it works.
So I did mention this, I believe, on episode 7's deep dive, or no, it must have been episode 6's, because that's the opening with Swan Sanche. That is, yes, that's the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai, and it does represent that level of balance, and then over time it's become corrupted to where that the black half of it has now be used as the dragon's fang, that symbol to symbolize dark friends.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Why Rand recognized that symbol, that it was the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, continuing with the symbol, I guess, Rand touches the symbol and pretty much immediately enters another dream. This dream is much different from the other one in that it actually transports him to a different place. So he's not still in the Eye of the World. He is now at the Althor farm that we saw, I believe it's in episode 1 for the first time. And instead of Tam Althor living there with him, it's him and Egwene and a young daughter named Joya. So I'm just curious again what you two were thinking when we kind of get transported into this dream world.
At least when I saw the baby, I just immediately thought of Min's vision of Egwene holding a baby. So I think this is just hammering home the fact that I really think that Egwene eventually will get the life that, maybe not the life she wants, but I think she'll eventually bear a child with hopefully Rand. I wasn't like, this scene wasn't like that crazy for me, like seeing what could be, I guess. It was more interesting when the Dark One finally appears in the dream world. But I guess this is just, like what the Dark One's saying, and when he does show up, is that this is what Rand wants. This is his innermost wants being displayed for him right now, and that he can make this his if he chose it. But, we know how that goes. But it was cool, I guess. Nothing crazy.
I was waiting. Sorry, I was just waiting for him to snap out of it, honestly.
Yeah.
Luke was making the point earlier. He kind of recognized he was in a dream with Moraine dying, having the conversation with the Dark One. I get that he was kind of overwhelmed with happiness at these visions of like his life that could be. But that being said, I'm like, come on, get out of it. You were just at a crazy peak point of your life, and all of a sudden you just like he did pick up on it after a little bit. But
I think what really what really got him stuck in this dream sequence was when he asked that question and regaled the story of him and Egwene. Like the fact that she answered correctly what it was, he was like, oh my God, like this is you. Like in the other ones, it was like looking at Moraine's body and seeing that she was dead. He was like, there's no way that could be it. So at least in the other dreams, there was something to him that felt really not real and that he could get out of it. But here he was looking for it in Egwene's question, or in his own question to Egwene, and then he gets his answer. So he's like, oh shit, maybe this isn't a dream. But
so what this does is actually makes it even better, the writing for the Dark One, in my opinion, because the Dark One is playing like a reverse psychology here thing, like trying to make it seem like this is what you want, So like Rand doesn't want it because he thinks that he wants him to want it, and then that causes him to do what he wants, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the Dark One is the one who's like, you think as an audience member initially, you're like, you think he's getting what he wants, obviously, and it just worked out. I just thought that becomes even better on a second rewatch because like you're thinking, oh my God, like Rand, the main character, he's busting through the plans. And then like, as this is all happening, I'm pretty sure Padan Fain is having his like voiceover explaining, or maybe that even happens a little bit after this.
It's a little bit later, yeah.
Exactly, to not ruin the reveal that basically everything is going according to plan. So I thought that made this even better because the Dark One's plan was never to have Rand give in to him at this point, like in this way.
We also get the confirmation earlier that from Moraine saying that he needs Rand to escape. So there's never a point in the Dark One's mind where he's going to kill Rand. Like he's literally just doing this reverse psychology to help him escape, basically.
It's just made it so much better on the rewatch because it wasn't just like a simple surface level, oh my God, Rand isn't an idiot. It was more like, but it kind of might be.
It could be,
yeah. I didn't like Paul said, I didn't love that we like jumped right into another dream sequence. Although I do think they did a decent job in this episode of making the dreams like so much more realistic versus how earlier in the series they were very abstract with like Perrin kind of with him like in the room and like the wolves eating her, and then like especially the one in episode 4 where Rand's kind of wandering around and Perrin's like hammering Layla on the slab and Matt's kind of walking around. I thought the fact that it feels like they're actually living in the real world versus like they kind of know they're in a dream was at least kind of well done. But yeah, so while Rand and Egwene are kind of, I guess, at this point enjoying this fake dream sequence, Moraine is actually in the real world confronting the Dark One. They have a little bit of a conversation. Moraine is kind of trying to desperately wake up Rand. The Dark One, I don't want to like jump ahead almost, but he places a shield over her. That is what happens. It's the same animation and when they shield Logain in episode 4.
2 fingers too, like that. It was
the ease at which he does it was a very purposeful thing that gets done. He definitely fucks her ass up. He makes it so that she cannot touch the source, at the very least in this moment. We'll talk about it a little bit more later though.
So then it's confirmed that it's not a stilling, or is that what you want to talk about later?
Oh, I mean, we can talk about it whenever. I just didn't want to be the person that jumps us ahead if people wanted to talk about it a little later. I think it's confirmed that she's not stilled.
By fans talking or by Rafe or somebody?
By what they did in the episode. So if you see here, and I'm not actually sure if it happens immediately in this scene or slightly later, because this scene jumps back and forth so much, in addition to jumping back and forth with things that are happening in Faldara, it does get a little confusing in the exact order in which these things happen. But you see like in his hands, it's like a little bit of a ball that comes together.
Uses like, all of them.
Yeah, that's like a knot. There's a concept that people that are really good at using the one power, like you would assume the Dark One is, where you can you channel a weave and then you can tie it off so that it just stays there. So episode 4, they weren't strong enough. They had to continuously shield Logain. But if they were strong enough, they could have put a shield over him and tied it off, and it would have just stuck there.
And then they can unknot it whenever they felt like if they went back to the White Tower with him, they could have okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're they don't know this kind of stuff, like because a little bit of the theme of this episode specifically too. They've lost so much knowledge, and the channelers themselves are so much weaker that they don't know that they can do this with the one power yet.
That's cool.
And that's what I saw floating around. Like I saw like images on Twitter, screenshot, like zooming in on his hand, tying it off, like to make it symbolize, like they put the time into CGI it to make it look like he's tying a knot of the weaves. And that is way better than stilling, because I don't know if there would have been getting back from that.
Instead of getting cut off, you just are blocked. It's not like completely gone.
Yeah. And also Moraine, I would assume, doesn't know that this is possible. So from her perspective, and obviously she doesn't know what it's like to be stilled. She's never been stilled before. So she's probably just assuming herself, which is an absolute favorite trope, I guess, of Robert Jordan, the author of the series, of the unreliable narrator. So we're getting this from Moraine's perspective. So she doesn't understand the concept of tying weaves off. So she's assuming that she's stilled.
And that kind of goes into the dialogue too, which I'm kind of appreciating now, is that when Lan shows up and she's explaining to him that she got stilled, she actually never says stilled. She literally just says, I can't touch the one power. So she goes from like her mindset of like she's completely fucked from the one power to I just can't touch it right now, kind of. So I kind of appreciate that dialogue a little bit more then, because she never claims herself to have been stilled, which I like.
Yeah, I just think it was they're just doing very small things like that that are, I think, hard to catch on the first time because you're on this such emotional like high of watching the episode for the first time.
Yeah.
It's easy to miss those kind of things. So honestly, first time I watched the episode, I thought that they had stilled her and was like, "This is bullshit."
That was Luke's reaction too. He was
Yeah,
sitting there and he was like, after the episode, he's like, this is not like how it is in the books. Like she's never stilled here, but this makes it a way more interesting aspect.
Yeah.
And we'll tie into hopefully how they can start recovering that old magic that they lost.
Of course. I like where your head's at, David. So the last little bit honestly, this dream's kind of broken into two parts, I would say. So the end of the first part of the dream is that now the Dark One shows up, freezes everything, and is kind of tempting Rand a little bit with the knowledge of the power. So we've gotten Moraine about 5 minutes before this rejecting him asking to teach him, while the Dark One is almost the opposite of this and says, like, did no one tell you what you can do? You can remake the world in your image, make it whatever you want it to be. So he's continuing this kind of theme of tempting Rand with this knowledge and this power. Moraine obviously can't do anything on that level to him. She can only basically push him towards this morally, like, you need to do this for the good of the world. So it's a little bit of that playing on inside the dream. To move into the second part of the dream, the Dark One kind of moves away from like almost pampering Rand of like, look all this stuff you can do, and he just kind of slits Dream Egwene's neck, which visually I thought was great. I thought they did a good job of that. And I just think it's funny how Rand like freaks out a little bit, and the Dark One's like, oh, like I thought you thought it was a dream and it was all fake, pussy. So I think he did a good job of like fucking with him in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a very interesting part now in that Rand kind of starts to lean, or at least you're supposed to think, I guess, that he's leaning towards the Dark One's side when he asks the question, how do I make it real? And I don't know if this is Rand like actually leaning that way or him being like very sneaky, because the Dark One starts to teach him almost how to use the power.
I thought he was being sneaky. I think he's still in the back of his mind is just aware that this is, because even after that first dream sequence that they have in the Blight, like he comes out of that dream and is like to Moraine, he's like, I heard like whatever he said, I don't buy a word of it. And like that commitment and resolve from him just never being able to believe the Dark One, I think it still transfers here. I think he's just being a little sneakily.
No,
he wants to learn how to use it too. Like
exactly. To me, it was sneaky on two levels. One, because he doesn't actually believe this, but two, get a couple of lessons from where you can. Like you have nobody to teach you this power. Take it a little bit, but also like if he did completely lean into it and wasn't being sneaky, like wouldn't that have been a losing situation for the Dark One? Because he needed him to like.
I'm sure there was like levels to his plan. Like I was thinking the same thing. Like if Rand just chose to follow him, like I think there was a level to where like the Dark One's like if he did lean that way, like that it would just work out for him regardless.
Sure.
But I think the Dark One was expecting him.
It was a win-win for the Dark One.
Either way,
at this point in time,
because I think what he wants is he wants Rand to be more competent of channeling the one power, because I don't think even at the end of this episode, I don't think Rand would have been capable of breaking the Dark One out however he needed to be. So that's why the Dark One's so willing to teach him here to channel, is because this is going to benefit him no matter what, whether it's right now or in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely to the Dark One's benefit that the dragon understands how to use his power. Mm-hmm. So the next thing that kind of happens is Rand begins channeling. So the Dark One kind of explains to him that you need to channel all of your emotions that you have except for want. So change almost everything that you're feeling into just pure want and desire, and let all of that flow through you. The Dark One at this point in the real world, I guess you could say, when he's talking to Moraine, thinks that he's kind of beginning to win this battle and this struggle a little bit. He starts taunting Moraine a little bit He even asked the question, like, do you like he's channeling, but like, what's he gonna do with it? Is he gonna break my chains or will he strengthen them?
And Moraine is holding Rand asleep hostage because if he does end up choosing that dark route, she expects that she'll just be able to slit his throat, and that'll end that.
Yeah, she starts drawing some blood too, so she's about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings up like my big question for all of this. So the whole thing of the Dragon Reborn can either break the world or save it. You know, either break the Dark One's chains or strengthen them. What happens if the dragon does nothing? Because like, does the Dark One just stay caged and slowly start to take over, or is he just trapped in there forever? Because you know, Moraine pulls out the knife and is like, "Hey, if he chooses wrong, I'm just going to kill him." But I'm thinking, all right, if you're really in the interest of the world, why don't you just kill the dragon no matter what?
Can
Just
I say
slice his
something real
throat.
quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Let me
My
take a
thought
crack
would
at
just
it.
be that we already get these quotes of the wheel is built or like does these things because it's destined to happen. So yeah, I think no matter what, if Rand somehow chose to be this neutral, not do anything character, the wheel would just make him eventually do something, or something would happen to make him.
Well,
I
I'm
think-
saying, why doesn't Moraine just kill Rand? Is there repercussions to that? Does the Dark One become free as soon as the Dragon Reborn's
I see what
gone?
you're saying.
Instead of giving the Dragon Reborn a choice, why not just kill him and get out of it? Unless there's repercussions.
Yeah, I'm killing the Dragon Reborn for the light side is an auto L.
You just lose.
Because no one else can fight the Dark One.
Would the Dark One just continuously build his power while in this like state of
Yeah.
slumber and weakness?
Okay.
Yeah,
That
it's
was
an
my question.
inevitability, essentially. Yeah,
Inevitability.
But Dave, I think you gave exactly the answer I would have given specifically about what would happen in the world if the dragon decided to do nothing, because I think the pattern would just begin weaving itself around the fact that he's doing nothing, which would
the
make
battle
him
would just bring it to
begin
it would just bring
to
it to
do
him.
like doing nothing would result in him doing something because of how the pattern weaves itself around Taviran and specifically the dragon too, even more. So I
that's
think
a
like
big part. Of the
everything
first
that
book, too.
happens.
It's a big part in this first season. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just what we've constantly been told. Like Nynaeve and everyone, like all the Amonsfield Five, are just constantly being told, like, you can choose to do nothing, but no matter what, you're going to end up doing something just because the wheel is going to will it that way.
But I do want to say something though, and this is if you care at all about the books, this is a small spoiler, but it's just a quote from the prologue of book 4. But I absolutely loved it. I think it's one of the best things ever. That it doesn't ruin like plot or anything like that. But one character is talking about the dragon who's not there in the room and says like, yeah, like the dragon is the most important point in the wheel and things happen around him, but he's not a superhero. Like he could freaking die still. Like he's not just going to be saved by the wheel no matter what happens. So like, while yes, like everything is going to revolve around him, shit can still happen. That isn't like, I don't know how else to say
He's just
that.
like so strong that he has the ability that like, yes, he can shape things can be shaped to him, but his decisions at the end of the day are going to be his decisions. And if he dies, then
He could still make
yeah.
like it's not like a predetermined fate.
Right.
Basically, everything isn't predetermined.
it's like the
Shit
end of
changes.
time. The end of time is like it's there, but it's going to adapt to whatever happens.
That's just the best way to
yeah.
see it. Yeah.
That is essentially it's a core concept throughout the entire series. So I think that it's good that you're thinking about it from that perspective, Paul. But it's impossible almost to get a full answer on that question. Honestly, probably until the series itself is over. I think they've done a really poor job of explaining a lot of things about the dragon, especially when it comes to also Taviran, because that plays into it a lot of as well of the kind of like where does destiny begin and end? At what point do they have free will to do things that they want? That all becomes that there'll be plot lines throughout the entire series. So I think that your head is certainly in the right place there. But at this point, no one who knows about the prophecies and like Moraine, who is dedicated to kind of seeing them fulfilled, would ever just kill the dragon. Because killing the dragon is essentially just dooming the world.
What I'm thinking about right now is how Luke mentioned that in the books, Rand is the one that goes back to the battlefield and is the one to stop all the Trollocs and everything. But in the battlefield, there's the 5 women, and I'm just now that we're kind of like on this subject, I'm just kind of thinking of the Tarvaren. What are they called?
Taviran.
Taviran.
Is that there's 5 of them, and we saw 5 people at that battle. You know, Link and give the power to this one being. So I just wonder if you have the four, let's say, next strongest people in the world linking with the strongest person in the world, just what kind of chaos or destruction that could bring. And I just got my mind wondering about how that could be eventually a big part of what the five of them are. Just this one link at the end.
The five of them, and they hammered it home. Padan Fain says they all have a part to play. The five of them at the end of the series are fun, I guess, for lack of a better, less spoily term to use.
Yeah.
All right, so moving back into what's actually happening in the episode itself. At this point, Dave,
and this one,
Rand, we're getting now. We're kind of Rand begins channeling into the sangreal that Moiraine gives him. We're now getting a little bit of an editing trick where we're revolving in a circle and we're going between Rand's actually awake in the real world, but he's still in the dream, which I thought was confusing of how both of those things are possible at one time.
The fact that he's still talking in the one part of it and the other one he's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Regardless of that, I guess we'll just let that be a thing. He now uses all of the power that he's channeled into the sangreal and blasts the Dark One away. And like we've mentioned a million times, that I'm glad we've mentioned a million times, the Dark One has a little bit of a smirk on his face as he disintegrates away into nothingness. I'm just curious, just like overall thoughts on this end of season, I almost said series, Jesus, confrontation between Rand and the Dark One.
I said it kind of in the beginning. It had the feel of it. Everyone was going into it being the last battle, but Moiraine even has a line like she fears it might be the first. Like it was just a crazy first chess move. It feels like that the Dark One made to have this long plan finally like pan out. So honestly, I can't even imagine where he wanted to go, like why he wanted this to happen, whatever it triggered. They do bring up the Heartstone. That's what it's called, right?
Not Hearthstone. It's
I know there's no H in there.
Yeah, there's no H.
Hearthstone is Kaladin's hometown.
Yes, gotcha. So
that right there is, sorry, Paul, that's the hardcover of Way of Kings bouncing on my finger right now.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Fuck yeah, almost done.
It's a good one. So yeah, like it just feels like everything's going according to plans for the bad guy.
Yeah, I obviously this was not going to be the final battle. Like this, we're season one. There's years more of this stuff to come out. I think the scene would have lost. I think him smirking at the end of him getting finger snapped out of existence makes this scene much better. Like if he was just like, yeah, like if he just didn't like if he was genuinely surprised that he was gonna just like be put away right in that moment, like then this I think would have felt a little bit forced in a way, just not as good. But the fact that he smirked and we get that look of this is all just according to my plan just makes me more hype for the seasons to come. So I thought the final battle was really good. Rand's character development just reached its peak in that moment without a doubt. Just really well done CGI, even though the dream sequencing bouncing back and forth of him using the sangreal was a little weird. I thought it looked amazing, and I just couldn't have been happier with how it ended up. I'm just happy that everything just fell into the Dark One's plan. I'm glad it just wasn't like, oh my God, he actually chose light and now I'm defeated again for another 3,000 years. So I like that aspect.
I'll add to it that I have raved at a couple of points throughout the season about the sound that the team puts together and that Amazon puts together, because they're so good at using silence to emphasize things. Like I was obsessed with the first Perrin dream sequence just because of how they used muffled sound to highlight like the flashes between the Dark One and Perrin and stuff like that. And at this part, like Rand is like getting his resolve. He's gathering up all of his strength, and the channeling's all going into the sangreal. And like as soon as in real time, as soon as all of the corruption and the white weaves go into his hand, it's just completely dead silent for like a split second. And then just the explosion of power and then sound and epic fantasy music, I thought just made it good on its face value. Like even regardless of what's going on, I thought the scene was epic and it fucking gave me chills both the second and third time I freaking watched it. Like, so I thought all that was good, but it was a little weird, the editing of jumping back and forth between him. He should have just been awake, I guess. But you know, I have no nitpicking to add to that part. I just thought it was pretty cool and well done by the sound team.
Yeah, I was pretty satisfied with it. Obviously, they were going to make changes to the ending of the first book. The ending of the first book is notoriously chaotic and doesn't really make a bunch of fucking sense at all. I still think this is still a little confusing on purpose, but I think the changes that they made were, in large part, very well done. Two things I'll say before I guess we get into kind of the epilogue of the episode, which is us, Rand and Moiraine, kind of taking stock of what they're going to do next. I think it was a nice touch, and I didn't notice this on my own. So shout out to everyone else that noticed this on the internet, that I'm going to steal your ideas. That what Rand realizes is off is that Egwene, this isn't the life that Egwene would want. And I just think that was a nice touch. Obviously, the episode says that for you, but I just think it was really emphasized well that he knew because he had a bad feeling about the dream the entire time, but couldn't really put his finger on it. And then he realizes that this actually isn't the life that Egwene would want. So why would he force her into that life? So that's what the Dark One got wrong.
That was really cool. The fact that the Dark One was all about selfishness. What do you want? What do you want? Wished into existence. But the thing about Rand is he wants what other people want. So to make them happy.
And that gets hammered home here because, I mean, in episode 1 and 2, it's like he's saying a lot of like, we want to just go back home to Aemond's Field 5 when it's like him, her, Moiraine and Lan. It's like, we want this, but like there are points throughout the season from that point on where it shows that Egwene doesn't want to just go back home anymore. Like she wants to go to the White Tower, and that all kind of really just gets settled in this one moment, which is really awesome to see. And again, testament to Rand's character growth, that he's like no longer thinking that what he wants is what the group wants. He's realizing that his own wants are his own, and that the others have their own paths that they want to follow. So love it.
I'm just mad about my guess about what Min saw when he saw Rand carrying the baby. I guess that was guessable, but I never ever would have thought that we were getting like a vision like this early. Remember when Min sees Rand in the first time telling Moiraine, he sees her holding the baby.
So that was
baby
referenced
Joya.
to this dream, not to actually what could be referenced in like 5 years.
I'm guessing.
Okay,
I didn't get that at all.
I didn't get that either, but
I thought that's what this was.
It easily could have been. I think
because that never actually happened and it came to fruition. That was something that the Dark One just showed Rand. It never actually happened, and she said, "Everything that I see happens."
I still think
the
it's
way
like,
I took it.
Like, I think it's still on the table. Like that is still could be Rand at the end of like all of this stuff going on. Like maybe not just in the dream. Again, this is all just theory talk.
I also think it's just a mixture of two separate scenes in the books that happen later, but I don't. Really know.
Again, I don't.
Yep.
Could be that.
That's just I won't comment on that.
Okay.
But the last thing about this, the dream and all of this, I just like how Rand says, "I did it."
Yeah,
I said that, and I just immediately was like, "No, you didn't."
Yeah, but it's season 1, brother.
Yeah, if
Season
only
1.
you were watching yourself right now, and how stupid you sound.
You didn't really do nothing.
He does say that at the end of book 1. He's like, "I did it," basically.
Yeah. And it's funny because he's trying to tell people, convince. He's like, "Dude, the Dark One's dead. Like he's dead. I did it." And they're like, Moraine's like, "I don't know, brother." So, okay, moving into post-battle, Rand essentially explains that while he was channeling, he felt the madness. They've done the CGI trick that we've seen a lot of, the blackness, the corruption covering over the weaves. So Rand explains now he felt that physically, the madness, and he's like, "I'm not going back to Faldara. I'm not going to risk everyone's lives. Just tell them that I died here." I like how Moiraine responds, "I can't lie." And then Rand, great response to that response is, "You work it out." And then he just kind of leaves. I like how he just leaves it to her. Paul, I believe, mentioned this, is that Land now kind of fills the hole that Rand leaves, comes to kind of comfort Moiraine. This is when we learn that Moiraine says that she can't touch the source. We've covered that where, I mean, I'm of the opinion that she's shielded. I think it's like 99% that she's shielded. I don't think they would steal her. I think that's too drastic of a change for them.
I love to hear Lan asks her, he's like, "Where's Rand?" or something like that. And she's like, "He's gone." And Lan just hits her with like a nod, just like, "Okay, he's not dead." Like he knows right away. Like if she had said he's dead, he would have been dead. But because the answer she gave, he's just like, so he's good. He's good by himself.
He's been fucking with Aes Sedai for like 20 years, so he gets it by now.
Yeah.
All right. So, like, also we've brought up, just to reiterate, because I think it's a very important point, that she's holding kind of a chip off the ground at the Eye of the World. They explain that it's called Heartstone, also known as, the old tongue name is Quendiar. They use the term Quendiar a lot in the books. They might roll into Heartstone because I guess feels a little less of like a terminology, a fantasy terminology. But they mention that it can't be scratched or broken or impacted at all by the one power. Yet Rand did something to make that happen. So that's, I guess, a little bit of a question mark of what's going on there. And then Moraine, like Paul has already said as well, reiterates the great line that it wasn't the last battle, but probably the first battle, which makes me feel a little bit sad for Agilmar. I guess he died thinking it was the last battle, so that's good for him. So he won't get the realization like
what he did.
Yeah, it was just the first one, bro. But like, thanks for the sacrifice. We appreciate you.
And is it too much probably to talk about like anything more with the Heartstone? I don't know if we should just let the show do its thing or
Definitely. I don't know anything about Hearthstone. I'd like want the show to kind of feed it to us.
I think it's interesting that it got broke here. Like, as someone who didn't read the books and just has no idea, it felt like to me it would have made more sense if the stone was left untouched, and that having it not be touched like would have been a sign of, okay, like something didn't, like nothing happened. Whereas it broke here, and now they're saying, okay, because it broke, this is only the first battle, which it just seems a little. I'll be interested to see how they can explain what it means later on. But to me, it makes more sense that if it was untouched rather than destroyed here.
I'm confident they'll bring it up. It's an unbelievably huge part of the books. So when it becomes a thing, it's going to become a thing.
So we're not going to get any more information on the Heartstone? Like, you don't think it'd be worth talking about?
I guess not.
No.
Okay.
No, not in this context.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, we can say that, it was something that was a material that was discovered during the Age of Legends.
Can you make weapons out of it?
Yes.
Okay.
You can. It's just a material that they used to make in the Age of Legends when men and women could work together with the power. That's like
so when you say like when it's unbreakable, I just think
vibranium.
Just make vibranium. Just make it into a weapon. Just weaponize it.
Essentially, it's just like the hardest material in that world.
Yeah.
All right, and we get final scene of Rand al'Thor from season 1. He heads out alone. Quick look back at the Eye, and then heads somewhere. I just wrote somewhere because we don't know. It looks like he's moving deeper into the Blight. I don't really know.
Me and Luke were going to try and see if what that like panned over screen like meant anything, and we couldn't. It just was. I think he was just moving deeper in. Yeah.
That's an interesting destination. It really seems like the only way he has to go would be back towards Valdara, but I guess they'll cover that at some point, or maybe we'll just get him jumping to a new location in season 2.
Maybe maybe the memories are stronger, maybe not in the Blight, or maybe this part of the Blight, and maybe his dreams will allow him to become more familiar with the one power and be more like like how I picture it is like maybe a little time skip for Rand. Like, we'll get everyone else's character arcs, but like Rand might disappear for a while, but then come back just a beast.
Okay. Is that what you think is going to happen?
That's just what I think is going to happen. Yeah. Like, I don't think we'll see Rand. I don't expect to see Rand maybe for the first couple episodes of season 2 is how I expected it.
I'm going to like laugh my ass off if like the cold open to season 2 is
just as Rand doing something.
Paul, what are you expecting out of Rand now that he's kind of off on his own?
I just figured he is either going to train by himself or look for somebody who's also another male channeler.
Tom Maryland?
Could be,
I thought Tom Maryland was the dark one.
Loyal was the dark one, but Loyal is not the dark one because he's stabbed.
No, I said Tom Maryland was a dark friend because he was trying to be Ishmael. No, that's what I said. He was Ishmael. And he was like, no, you're not going to take it. I'm going to keep my name. I'm going to go 2 for 2 and bring in a DR.
Okay. But
that being said, just no idea.
He's clearly on a journey to somewhere. He has some type of destination, it seems, almost in his mind, but we will see how that plays out. So the final scene of the episode just completely teleports us somewhere completely different, gives us a name card. We are on the far western shore, If we recall from episode 5, our girl Megan in the bath scene with Moraine mentions that there are mysterious ships off the western coast. This is just a callback to that. We see a young girl playing on the beach as an armada of these strange ships approach. Some women on board channel just an absolute fucking tsunami tidal wave and just obliterates this young child
Yeah.
on the beach.
She was digging for clams, but all her hard work went to naught because it got covered up again.
The people remind
They were
me of,
really
like,
cool.
Yeah, they just really quickly. I just want to say they remind me of like a Mad Max Roman kind of thing. Like their ships were very Romanesque, but their looks were very just post-apocalyptic.
I mean, they had horns and spikes on everything. They seemed like their culture is very brutal in nature. I mean, the face paintings alone, like you were kind of going at, and they also had. It looked like they had people controlling other people to channel. They weren't channeling themselves. It almost looked like the women who were channeling, they had like mouthpieces in. They looked like they were being controlled or almost like enslaved to channel for these people. That's what I was getting off that scene. That could be completely wrong. But they look like they just want to come in and conquer. I have no idea what their goal is.
2 things I'll say. First is that this is one of my favorite factions ever, and I love factions. This is going to be such a fun storyline going forward. Yeah, I mean, sure. Also, shout out to Daniel Green because he definitely was looking forward to the Sean Chen coming too. But second thing is that this is not going to appear in the show, but I think it's just a fun tidbit of information that Kyle, you actually told me. I think it's hilarious. Is that in the books, Robert Jordan wrote this. I'll keep using the word faction with Texan accents, which they definitely will not have because that would just take you out of the show.
If they had Texan accents,
is that confirmed? Is that
absolutely
confirmed?
not. But if they do, if they don't have Texan accents next season, just think about in your head every time they're talking. If they had like a completely sandy cheek Southern style, just like it's hilarious when you look at it like that.
Yeah, they speak in the audiobooks. They like draw out every word. They sound drunk, but it's just so I just legitimately can't picture them speaking like people from Texas.
Yeah, and they're gonna be fun.
Just put it in perspective for the people listening. Luke and Kyle have shown us maps of a map of the world that we see and like how basically everything that we've seen, basically episodes I would say 1 to 4 kind of take place in like the middle parts of the map almost. Whereas Tarwin's Gap is the northeast part of the map, and a lot of what we see is from the middle to the northeast. But this, we obviously get confirmation, is the far west side, which we have never seen anything in the show yet of the far west coast. So it'll be definitely interesting to see the culture, the people here, what they have to offer, and who these people are invading them from. Because it seems like they come from maybe the Westeros of Game of Thrones kind of reference, like another island that is on the opposite side of the map that we haven't seen yet. But it's just going to be cool seeing this new group of people and the group of people's on the ship and the group of people's living on the West Coast. So,
All right, Luke, do you want to go through that, like the things that you liked from the Q&A that they did, and then we can do episode ratings and then get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, sure. So
BCam.
So everybody knows that Rafe Judkins. Is it proper to call him Rafe Lee Judkins?
If I'm honest, I don't know. I only really see people call him Rafe.
Okay. So the showrunner.
First name basis.
Yeah. So our boy Rafe and the actor who plays Logain, who's also in Money Heist, who I also don't have his name.
I believe his name is Alvaro Morte.
Yes. So they did a massive Q&A through Amazon on Twitter, either the day before or day after of the season 8 or the episode 8, the finale premiere. And I took a screenshot of a couple of these things. You should go look up this thread. It's amazing. Gives you a lot of information. But some of the questions that I thought were worth bringing up on the podcast that were either big complaints or just good tidbits of information. So one of them, and I guess this is more specifically for book readers here, is why did you miss out on the Avon Desora leaves of the Waygates? And there's actually a quick little screenshot. I don't think we even talked about this, but did you know that, Kyle, that Padan Fain is holding the leaf when he's walking through it. I didn't even catch that.
Someone on the YouTube comments, because I'm obsessed with reading your guys' YouTube comments, and it meant nothing to me, but someone pointed out that he's holding a leaf. Yeah.
So that means that you can get through the way gates if you have the key without channeling, and that's important because I thought that was like super annoying. So they answered that one. The second one was, this was a big complaint that was popularly talked about when it was the Logain episode 4, when Nynaeve explodes with the sun. They said, was Logain able to see Nynaeve's weaves? It looked like he was shielding his eyes. And the answer from Rafe was, I'd shield my eyes too if I saw a woman absolutely explode with energy that shook the cave, healed a dozen people, and undid her braid. Braid undoing energy is blinding, yo. So like, so basically the complaint was like, why can Logain see the female weaves? And he's saying right there, it wasn't. Like, she was just an explosion of power. Like, the cave was physically shaking. So that was that answer. And then I had two more here.
Doesn't really answer it. Feels like it just dodges.
I mean, but it's
I just feel like that's just like straight up evidence that what they tried to do failed. Which is, I mean, hey, not everything's gonna work, but.
And then this one's a huge one. It's just, someone asked, how many seasons ahead are you thinking when making these decisions? He said all of them. You have to be, because there's a lot of stuff that we set up in season 1 that are huge changes from the books that we need to make a payoff for later. So that at least with that bit of information, we know that these huge fucking changes that everybody's hating, like, are thought front to back fully all the way through. And then the last one I had here was just about like what Rafe's expectations were from diehard book readers and then from completely new to the series Wheel of Time fans. Like, what did he think going into this show he was going to do? And the first thing he said was, I knew right off the bat that we are going to lose pretty much every single completely diehard book reader, like you can't make a single change or it's not a good adaptation fans, as well as people who completely aren't into fantasy. Like, you're not just going to be drawn into this show, basically, is what he was saying. He says, like, the main target audience is everybody in between. So essentially me, right? Like, I'm not like the biggest I haven't read all the books. Like, I don't have know enough to complain, but I love fantasy. So like, everybody in between, he was kind of aiming to make this show for. So, you know, he was very aware that there was going to be some negative backlash from all the diehards, and that's going to happen with everything. I think the same thing happened with Game of Thrones when it was coming out, and, you know, let it breathe a little bit, give it a couple seasons, it becomes the biggest show of all time. And I think we're pretty much on the same path. Rafe's got a great mind for this, and it seems like he cares to his core. So like, all of the answers that he was giving on Twitter were just, you know, they reassured me and gave me more confidence that the gripes that we're having aren't going to be show ruining. Like, they are thought through front to back.
Yeah, I mean, all that works for me.
Yeah.
So we can't talk about the entire episode and not give our episode rankings. I guess I don't want to go first because I just want Dave and Paul to just give their opinions.
Paul, you can go first.
I would say it was like a solid 8. I want to say maybe like an 8.5, just because it was the climax. There was really cool parts, introductions to the Dark One's human face and form. You know, actually getting to the eye of the world. There was really cool climactic points. I guess it felt weird because there was a little bit to be desired, like left to be desired. I don't know exactly what it was. It just felt as a finale, almost not anticlimactic to when Rand is, you know, channeling into the object and actually, you know, explodes. I don't even know what to say. The Dark One. It all happened almost so quick, and like you said, Rand was like, "I did it," and even he was like, it seemed like there was more like left behind the curtain. So I thought it was a good episode overall. Really good, honestly, ending point to season 1. Just because I said it before, I don't know where it's going to go, and really setting up season 2 for a lot of different angles. They could start from so many different storylines.
I'm with Paul. I think an 8. I was tempted to say 8.5, but I'll give it an 8 for now. It was very well done finale. I'm very happy with Rand's character. Padan Fain was great. The Dark One was phenomenal. There was a lot of excellent points to the episode. Just the small trifles that I had as someone who was first time watching a non-book reader, they were really small, but it holds it back a little bit. Like, the other episodes felt like they had a lot less flaws than this one did, which stinks at the expense of the finale, but I'll still stick with it, giving it an 8. borderline 8.5 for me.
All right, so I would say that this was probably my fourth favorite episode, behind like the tier 1 episodes being 7, 4, and 3. Like I loved all the Dana stuff. I loved the Logain episode, and I thought last episode was phenomenal too. This fits around 4 just through like the sheer top tier moments of the episode, with like, you know, Rand exploding with the power. I loved everything with the Dark One, and then Padan Fain was a savage. But with that being said, if I could go back and rate them, I wish I could change all my ratings to make it more like,
It's
you know,
easier to
the
do
scale
that,
better.
yeah.
But I would stick with, like, right now probably like a 6.5 to a 7, around that area. The lows really dragged it down, but the highs kept it relevant and in my top 4, so it was still in the top half of the series. But yeah, it could have been better, and I think in hindsight, like when we see the changes that they made play out a little bit more, and if they are satisfying, this could be raised even further. But go Rand, go Padan Fain, fucking call it a season. Loved it. It was a time and a half.
I'm going to. I was coming in here anticipating giving it like a 5.5. I think that talking about it has helped a little bit to get it to a 6. I do agree, like looking back and like maybe trying to redo the other ratings, but it's really not that fucking big of a deal. But I will say that a big part of why I think I liked a lot of the other episodes was that there was always more to come, and that if I had a gripe about something, there was an opportunity for the next episode to kind of to address it. Case in point, the Glory to the Builders thing. Didn't love that didn't happen in episode 7, but it happened in episode 8, so it's like, okay, it's not a big deal. But I think that this episode obviously doesn't have that benefit of the doubt of future episodes can fix, I guess, immediately in my eyes, of the things that went wrong. Just some really atrocious shit happened. The Nynaeve thing is just, I said that the parent stuff was my least favorite thing to happen. I didn't even think they could do something as bad as fake kill Nynaeve. So that might be my new least favorite thing that happened. But I agree that the Padan Fain stuff was really good. The Rand stuff was fairly good as well. I do still wish that we had gotten Rand be the fucking Super Saiyan savage that kills all the Trollocs, just to really showcase how strong he is. But that's okay, I guess, in my eyes, because it'll end up coming around.
Based off what I've heard from book readers, it seems like Luke told us while we were watching for the first time that one of our non-podcaster friends who read Wheel of Time and watched the season finale also felt like it wasn't a great showing of a finale. So it just seems like there is this is the one episode that, like, where book readers and only show watchers are really going to diverge a little bit,
Yeah.
which is obviously to be expected because of the book readers' knowledge of what's to come and everything. Of course, the standards might be a little different, but for someone who hasn't seen or who hasn't read the books, I thought, you know, the finale was great.
Yeah, I just think, I don't know, the editing stuff was a little wonky too. I feel like I don't think the battle with the Trollocs really hit anything hard at all. Everything happens, it seemed like, very quickly. And honestly, the just insane amount of fake out deaths is just, I think, terrible for a season finale. I mean, almost everyone we saw die probably isn't going to be dead, bar probably Agumar and like Lady Amalisa. I just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I also don't think that anything really got like wrapped up. It felt like it felt like I guess I don't love the idea of us leaving the finale with way more questions than we went in with. It feels like nothing almost was satisfying to me.
And it's always going to be a sticking point too. Hopefully it gets, as we get farther and farther away from Matt's actor leaving, and like that change having like less of a repercussion as we get farther away from it, right? Like, and in the beginning of season 2, we're going to be introduced to this new actor. Hopefully he's like charismatic and he's who we want him to be, and we'll be able to start cleaning some of those things up, maybe giving him a higher spotlight to make him as important. That'll be good. But yeah, like they were fighting against COVID. They were fighting against, you know, Matt's actor leaving and all these last minute rewrites. Now that they know it was such a worldwide success, it was like the highest stream show for weeks. It still might be, probably is. I think that they might even extend it to 10 episodes next season, because that's what Rafe has been asking for. And if we get that, we'll be able to flesh out some of these concepts that we want explained more explicitly. And
yes,
I don't know. I think season 2 is just going to be significantly better. And I loved season 1.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. The watching The Witcher season 2 to me just in terms of like a quality standpoint, it seemed
Mhm.
like it was such a much better, like well-made show that hopefully
Yeah.
something similar can happen with Wheel of Time. I agree completely that COVID kind of fucked with a lot of their editing shit, and hopefully, maybe not season two. Season two might be too soon, but maybe season 3, 4, 5 can get more episodes because I think they need it. I don't understand why they try to put themselves in such like a 64 episode box. Like Game of Thrones almost did the same thing.
And
Where
if
it was
you
like, we need this number of episodes and we're going to squish the story into it. I mean, obviously, I don't work at a fucking studio and I'm not the one bankrolling all this shit, but it just seems like it's so obviously a bad idea.
and even when you look at the big picture with completed shows like Game of Thrones, things like that, it's just like season one is most of the time like one of the weaker seasons, and for how strong this felt, that's why my hopes are so high for Wheel of Time. But yeah, of course, they're like season one, like Kyle was saying, it's just got to be a lot of fleshing out of these issues with on and off screen issues, and I just think this flexibility of season one being the fact that it's still considered very good by all of us and that it's just season one of, like I was saying, like season one's usually not the best. So I think this just is a great start to the show.
Yeah, love the series so much, so that's why I'm going to be a little hard on it. Same way that I'm sure you guys are about The Witcher. It's just the nature of the game.
Yep.
It's just kind of how it is. All right, that is it for us. That's all of our deep dive coverage of episode 8 of the entire series itself. Yeah, that technically works because season 1 is the only part of the series. If you stuck with us, we really appreciate you. We love all the YouTube comments, like we said. You can catch us on all social medias. BingetownTV, that is us on everything. We got a Patreon. We got a website, BingetownTV.com, yada, yada, yada. Interact with us. We love interacting with you guys. Ask us questions, correct us, all that kind of fun stuff. And I don't know if this will be our last Wheel of Time episode. We might get around with, there's 3 other Bingetown members. You guys have met Brian if you've watched all the episodes. We got 2 other, honestly, ringers in our back pockets. We might bring them on to talk more about Wheel of Time and maybe a little bit less. Like an episode, we'll kind of talk about season-wide things. And then obviously we've been talking about The Witcher a little bit, so we cover The Witcher as well. So if you're watching that, check our shit out on that as well. A bunch of other TV shows that we cover. And honestly, happy, I guess, end of 2021. Hope 2022 is good to all of us and to you as well.